Bye.
Here we are at the Keoho Hotel at the Convention Center, about to go in to the TMT, National Science Foundation meeting. As our camera gets in, you're going to see a big school of Ave'o, all of our kia'i wearing their red, unified, ready to show again for whatever time this is, the 587th time that we do not consent to the building of the 30-meter telescope. We oppose, we do not consent to the NSF funding the 30-meter telescope, and that if in fact they do decide to push this process through again, that we will not allow them to build the 30-meter telescope. So we're here live in Kona. We're probably going to be starting in about 5 to 10 minutes. And so we got the live stream going. If you folks want to take a listen and see what's happening in our community. We saw it happen in Hilo. We saw it happen in Ka'u. Tonight, we'll show you folks what's happening in Kona. So, aloha nui kākou, mahalo for tuning in. Let's take a walk inside.
These guys called me up. They tell me, hey, we need somebody to kick me off. Open up. I tell them, hey, I live in Kahohe. These guys, they don't know Kahohe. These guys, they don't know where the mountains stop, where the mountains start. It's okay. They're gonna learn. Yo. We here to teach. Yo. We here to educate them about who we are. Yo. We're here to have a conversation about what it is that we will tolerate and what it is we will not. And using Hilo, we open up the protocol. It's only correct to begin that way. Last night down Na'alehu, not so much. You know how those guys down South Point.
Oh yeah.
There you go. There you go. We come here in Kona, we know kia'i is strong. Yo. The difference between this process and the others, and you guys all remember the others, right? The difference is this is a formal process. This is the process where what you say counts. This is old school. Everything from measles blankets to trinkets from Manhattan. We don't do trinkets here. We don't do trinkets. We do family. Who can behave as family? We're going to show them what it is that they've been missing all this time. By being here tonight, do we acquiesce, Billy? Do we give in to a plebiscite by being here? Are we Native Americans? Are we a tribe? I'm watching a government tell another government that an island that is 100 miles off its coast and is filled with Chinese people who got there in 1949, escaping Mao, that island is not part of China. Even though they speak Chinese and yes, because they want to identify as free. Good on you, U.S. And then there's us, and we're 2,000 miles from their shoreline, and we speak a different language, and we're different people. But oops, we're not free. We're Americans. Good on you, U.S. I just want to make sure that I speak that into the room, so we're all clear about what the facts are. And then you can have your opinion. Ayo? You are entitled to your opinion, and I want you to share it freely. and without reservation. But I want us to be clear here. We are a family. Long after these hearings are over, we're going to have to be here for these. Mo'opuna. For the opio. For what comes. Eyo? Let's all remember that. One other thing. These people here are not the ones responsible for the last 21 years. They came here to hear the truth. And they've been getting harangued, and I know because I've been haranguing them. And they're here to take it, and to hear the truth, and hear what's really going on. It is no secret to us that there are other Hawaiians who have offices in Washington, D.C., who are running around with feathers in their hair waiting to be recognized as a tribe so they can get their AA funding. That is not a mystery. But it does not represent the community that I know. And I want to make that clear to them that I believe they've gotten some misinformation. Yo? Thank you all for coming. And if you don't mind, my tutu said, it doesn't begin right. This thing really did begin right. Tonight, let's start. So, we're not going to do protocol. Because somebody should only come to your house when they're invited. Yo? When they come, treat the sacred stranger with dignity. Yo? Mahalo ke oku. No hanui koe. Mahalo I tala. I nau ahine o ki koe. Mahalo aua kia. I kani koe. Mahalo papa I moku ai aina I olo mai. Mahalo e mahi. Le kuhi mana I e mai. Mahalo e mahi nui. E mai tāpou. I te au. Mahalo I a kāko. Ina naku pono. Ina au. Mahalo I mene ne. E hula pa. E holo pona. Thank you. Great Creator stands behind all things. Thank you, the Spirit of the water. And thank you, Grandfather, Son, and the woman who is the seed. Thank you, the Sky Father, to the car, thank you. Thank you, First Mother, who we always are. Thank you. Grandmother Moon, who brings us the time and guidance. Thank you. The great Grandmother, who from the darkness of the day, who brings us the light. Thank you, all of you, for what you think is right, for the way you feel. Thank you for the song. Thank you for the dance. Thank you for the times we heal. We may not be able to fix this thing, but we can heal it. Yo? Mahalo. Mahalo all for taking the time. You're so great. And thank you. Thank you for coming here. Mahalo.
Thank you so very much. Madeline, would you please let folks know about some of the logistics for tonight?
Thank you so much. Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you, Carolyn, and welcome everybody. And as you all know, we're here for the scoping meetings for the environmental impact statement, for the potential National Science Foundation, and a staff investment in an extremely large telescope in the Northern Hemisphere. Well, reminders for a meeting tonight. We are gonna have, we already have a couple minutes to kind of get acquainted, right? We're gonna have a very short presentation by NSF, and then we'll go ahead and start public comments. We have Wendy Graves with us. She's our co-reporter for tonight. This meeting is also being recorded for future reference. Wendy's gonna need a little break every hour, so we'll stop for about 10 minutes after every hour of comments, just so you're aware. We also have some information in the middle table with the blue tablecloth. There is some frequently asked questions, a couple of fact sheets, and also forms if you'd like to provide a comment in written form. If you won't like to stand at the podium for some reason, you can pick up a form and provide your comments. But also, we have verbal comments, so we'd like for you to please come to the podium when you're called. You can come and sit close to the podium if you'd like. And provide your comments. And we'll give you more details as we start. Again, thank you everybody. If you have any questions, we're here for you. Restrooms are outside the exit here to the left. As a reminder. Go ahead, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madeline. Thank you again from us for coming here and sharing your perspectives. We are very interested in hearing what you have to say, and as was mentioned, this is a formal process. So if you want your perspective to be formally considered as part of the decision-making process, please do comment either orally or in writing, as Madeline mentioned, or you could later on, if you decide I'd like to make a comment. The comment period goes until September 17th, and you can go on our website, and that is beta.nsf.gov/TMT. And also, as was mentioned before, NSF is new to the TMT situation. We recognize that there have been decades of processes involved, or decade plus, I guess, of processes for TMT. And many of you, I'm sure, have already given your perspectives to state agencies or University of Hawaii. We're not part of either of those. We're an independent federal agency. In fact, we have one political appointee, and that's our director. And a director serves a 6-year term, so it goes over presidential administrations. So we have the benefit of having a little more flexibility than many federal agencies. And NSF cares very deeply about hearing all views. We have not made a decision. We're years from making a decision. And we're neutral. We're a funding agency. That's what we are. And proposals come to us and we evaluate them. So it's not our project at all. And won't be our project. So it's just unless there's a decision down the line where we have a stake in it. But for now and for years, we're very neutral. And so we look forward to hearing your views on things, on this issue. Also, I wanted to make it clear that if anybody does not wish to associate their name with their comment, they can submit comments anonymously. So you should feel comfortable doing that. You can do that through the website. You'll see the comment form, and it has an address, an email address there for you to submit your comment anonymously. You just request that. We also recognize that this project stirs up a lot of emotions for people and sensitivities, and we're cognizant of that, and we are doing our best to respect that. And knowing that you've spent many times, providing your comments in the past, I'm sure you're like, again, why are we doing this again? We have federal laws that require us to do this formal process, and so that's why we have to go forward and do this. So we greatly appreciate you coming up once again. For us the first time, but for you, who knows how many times. So we greatly appreciate that, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Now I think I'll turn it to my colleague, Dave, and actually before I do that, if you don't mind, I'd like to just quickly introduce our team so you know who we are. We are all wearing name badges. I'm Caroline Blanco. Introduce yourself.
Dave Boballs.
And to Dave's left is Kristen Hamilton. Karen Pierce, who's over there. They were all waving their hands when I called them. Elizabeth Pentecost, and those are from the NSF, National Science Foundation. As Madeline mentioned, we have Wendy Grace here, who is our court reporter. And as she mentioned, we'll take, as Madeline mentioned, we'll take a 10-minute break about every hour so she can rest her fingers, because it's a very difficult task there to do. Michelle Rao from Jacobs Engineering, who's our environmental contractor that's assisting with this environmental review. Madeline, you've already met. Christina McDonough, who's over there, I believe, yes. Lori Price, and Richard Mans. So with those introductions, I will turn it to my colleague. Okay, a purpose of a scoping meeting, of course, that's a very important thing. Thank you. The purpose of this scoping meeting, this is pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act, which is, we call it NEPA for short, and that's the federal statute that requires federal agencies to do an environmental review to consider the environmental impacts as part of their decision-making process. When there's a situation like this situation where major impacts are expected, we go straight to the highest level of an environmental review, and that's the environmental impact statement process. That process has very prescribed timeframes and stages that we have to comply with. This is the very first one. This is called the scoping process, and it is designed today, it is designed here, and the purpose of this meeting is to gather your thoughts on what alternatives should be studied, the whole scope of the environmental review, what resource areas should be looked at. So if you see the preliminary proposed alternatives that are there, they're not going to be the ones necessarily that are the ones ultimately studied. Depends on your feedback as well. So you might just say in your comment, oh, I like this one, or this one should be changed this way, or here's one you might not have thought of. Whatever you think you believe we should be looking at, please tell us, because this is the stage where truly we're just looking at the scope. We'll be having many more opportunities for public participation, and we look forward to seeing your participation at those points. What we'll do after the scoping meetings, which again, we will have a public comment period going through September 17th. We'll take those comments into consideration, and ultimately we'll be preparing a draft environmental impact statement, which won't come out until sometime next year, probably early summer. And then at that point, when it's issued, we'll be coming back out for more public meetings. And that's part of the NEPA process. The NEPA process is one where we produce something like scoping materials, and we receive comments, or a draft environmental impact statement, we publish it, and we receive comments. But that's how that statute works. There's another statute that is much more conversational, and that's Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. And that's one where we take a look at how the proposed action here impacts nationally significant historic, cultural, archaeological resources. And and we work with what we call consulting parties, and these are Native Hawaiian organizations if they choose to participate, also interested parties who have a connection to Mauna Kea and a connection to resources, an interest in those resources, the State Historic Preservation Division, and the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. So we've already initiated that process, but we haven't started consultation meetings yet. We are waiting until the close of the comment period to see who's interested in participating as a consulting party, so that then we can organize a meeting of those consulting parties and start to have those conversations. But there will be many of those conversations with consulting parties. So that's something else to look for in the future. And we have you might see this review process. Maybe on one of the breaks you might want to come up and take a look at these posters. That shows how the two processes, the environmental impact statement, or EIS, will be married up with the Section 106 process. So you can see how those work out. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is we did a draft community engagement plan. So we started out in August of 2020 with what was called an informal outreach effort. This isn't required. There's no federal statute that says you have to do this. We just thought, we knew that the astronomy community's decadal survey was going to come out and that TMT was going to be evaluated, and we thought we really should get a better understanding of what the community thinks and how they feel. So Dave and Karen Pierce over there and I met with about 150 people over Zoom for hours and hours and hours, and it was an incredible experience. We met with people from all across the spectrum, people for TMT, people against TMT. We learned a whole lot from them. We hope to let them know a little bit more about the National Science Foundation, and it really was a very valuable experience. So the comments we heard from those folks, and also people who submitted written comments, even though there was no public comment period, we looked at those, and it helped to form our environmental review. And one of the things we recognized pretty quickly was that whatever we did, we had to do something different than what's been done in the past, and allow for some real meaningful opportunities for people to participate. So we created the draft community engagement plan, which is available online. There are hard copies. There are probably a few right there. Karen's holding one up. They're available at the public libraries throughout the Hawaiian Islands. What this plan does is it says this is how the National Science Foundation proposes to engage the public in this process. And we're asking for your comments on it during the same public comment period that closes September 17th. This is something that hasn't been done before, but we thought it was important because we wanted to know, did we get it right? Did we not get it right? Do you think we should do something else? So hopefully you can let us know that and be frank with us and let us know what you think. We have a hope that this is a process that ultimately is collaborative, and one that can be used as a model for other federal agencies to follow, perhaps other state agencies to follow, and to say this is how you can collaborate with the community to really find out what people think and to have a more meaningful review. So we encourage you to take a look at that draft community engagement plan. There are two main features I will briefly cover, and that is one thing we learned in informal outreach was that people hadn't had a say in what the studies would be like that would factor into the draft environmental impact statement and what they covered. So what we decided to do is for any study that we will do to prepare the draft environmental impact statement, we'll go ahead and we will develop a study plan, a draft study plan that will explain the scope of the review and of the study to be done, and also the methodology to be used. So we'll say, this is how we're going to figure out whether there are impacts to these resources, and send it out for public comment for 30 days. So you can tell us, you're missing the point here, or this is right, or whatever you might think about it. So we'll factor that in and then carry out the study. The other feature that is unique about this process is that we're going to be hosting a workshop in probably the beginning of the next calendar year. And this is also feeding into one of our alternatives that we're taking a look at now as a preliminary proposed alternative. And it will take a look at, it will have two major components. Right now it looks like it'll be a 2 to 3 day interactive workshop, but it could be different if you provide comments and you say it needs to be different. One will be an educational component where people who have a connection to Mauna Kea, Hawaiians, will explain to astronomers, the astronomy community, this is why this is important to us. And the astronomers will then have an opportunity to explain, this is why these facilities up there are important to us, this is what they do, this is what we hope to achieve. So there can hopefully be a real conversation there between the two groups that we don't believe has really happened before. That would be one component, and then the second component of the workshop would be to develop a plan that defines and explains how to practice responsible astronomy in Hawaii. So that is the objective of the workshop, and there's more information available on that workshop in the appendix to the draft community engagement plan. And the last thing I'll say before turning it over to my colleague, who probably now regrets me, who's reminded me that I missed a slide, really, if you'd like to see the comments we heard during the informal outreach effort, we put all of them in an attachment in the appendix to our draft informal outreach effort. We didn't, because it's almost 40 pages, we didn't include that in one of the hard copies here, but they are available in the library and they are available online. Because we had committed to preserve the confidentiality of the people we spoke with, nobody's name is mentioned in those comments, and anything that might identify who they are, we also remove that. So please take a look at those, and hopefully you'll see where we're coming from. So with that, I'll pass it on to Dave.
So if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to stand because that's the way I'm used to giving talks, and I've been sitting in the previous presentations this week, but I'd like to, this is the way I'm used to doing things. So anyway, I'm here to tell you a little bit about the National Science Foundation, and specifically within that, the Astronomy Division and what we do for the United States. So the National Science Foundation funds all the non-medical related science within, or the vast majority, I shouldn't say all of it, but the vast majority of the non-medical related science in the United States. So you can think about oceanography, aquaculture, climate change, geosciences, math and physical sciences. If there's some result in the newspaper and the journals, we likely fund it in the United States. And so we do this in two ways. First, we have a set of major, what we call major research facilities or major infrastructure. And these are the tools that we use to get that science done. So if you can picture this as a business, our product is science. You guys are the customers, the taxpayers. And so, and then the other way we do it is we fund individual investigator grants. So these grants go out to the various researchers, and you can picture that as our workforce, right? We're also very concerned with STEM education, right? Because without a STEM pipeline, without new people coming up through this pipeline, we have no workforce. And so we have no one to produce this science for you, the customers. And so that's what we do at the National Science Foundation. We're an independent agency. We're not the Department of Defense. We're not in any of the big cabinet level agencies. We're a small agency. And then within the National Science Foundation, we are just a division within there. So there's this vast amount of science that's funded by the National Science Foundation. Astronomy is one of those sciences. I happen to think it's the best science, but some people, would beg to differ. Anyway, as a funder of astronomy in the United States, we are also the federal steward for all ground-based astronomy. So if there's a telescope that's operated by the United States,
We're going on 6:30. We heard meaningful consultation. I think the people here didn't come to listen to what you guys want to do. I think meaningful consultation means you guys come here to listen to what the people have to say. We started at 6. It's almost 6:30. I think it's our turn to talk. That would be meaningful. That would be meaningful.
Shut up! Shut up and sit down!
If you want them to sit down and listen, stand up.
Thank you for that. And what we will do is we'll just wrap up very quickly and get to the comments. Thank you. Thank you. But we want to make sure that everybody has had the same background information at all the meetings, because that may be your opinion, but there may be the others who feel elsewhere. We're trying to respect all opinions. And we will stay beyond 8
If you
o'clock. We've
respected
stayed
us, you
2
would talk to
hours
us
past.
about our science, local
we
this
define
stuff,
what
our
we
mama,
want.
our ecosystems.
We
This
should
is
be
heaven.
able to speak our mind. We should have to wait till 9 o'clock to talk. You guys can talk about everybody else talks.
Understood.
But we
It's
are
been
here to
disrespect
tell
for
you
50
what we
years.
think.
Folks, if we want to make sure we have time for everybody's comments,
Then we need to start right now.
let's-
Not later.
we
Right
will-
now. Right now. To make sure that there's time for everybody. There wasn't enough time in Hilo. There wasn't enough time in Ka'u. If we want enough time, we start right now.
Testimonies, we want to hear from the people. You want to hear from the people. You said we never had dialogue before. That's not true. We've been talking for 20 years. You want to hear the people's opinion? Then listen to the people.
we
We
do.
heard this rhetoric. Oh, you know open.
All right, folks, can we please we will wrap this up and we will get straight to the testimony. And as soon as I get the list of people who have signed up, then I can start that process. So if you bear with us for just another minute, we'll wrap it up.
It's right here.
Okay?
Right here.
Do you want to just conclude?
Yep. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say we're a different agency. We're not TMT. We're in no way involved in the 2019 controversy that occurred on the mountain. We had nothing to do with it. Okay, we are completely different. This is a proposed project to the NSF.
You just said
Understood?
astronomy is your favorite science.
It is.
Well, how can you be objective?
Thank you. Our turn.
All right.
Because I don't make the decision.
You were told and asked not to come now.
Okay, folks, what we can do is we can have, during the breaks, we'd be happy to have more conversation. But for now, let's start our comments. And I'll give you the order of people who signed up. Keikoa Ali, followed by Alexis Kerger, Auntie Momi Green, and then Sarah Kihoi. Okay.
Hello.
And just so you know about the comments, the
Yeah.
structure to make
I
sure.
signed up for the comment.
Yes, and look forward to
Okay.
it. What we will do for everybody to make sure everyone has a chance to say what they'd like to say, we're going to start with 2 minutes per person. There'll be a yellow sign up there, and it will be, the yellow sign will say 30 seconds left, and it'll be followed by the red sign saying time completed. And then at the end of it, if we have time left over, we're more than happy to stay and have people speak more freely if they
You can't
wish.
do that in NAIF. You have to
Okay,
do 3 minutes.
my name is William Kili'u Kalani Freitas. I'm born and raised here in Hawaii. I was raised in Kona most of my life. I'm gonna say one thing. You folks already got a lot of factual testimony when you were in Hilo, okay? There is a lot of corruption that went on for you to end up here. That's the reason why you're here, is because of legal corruption. Illegal corruption, I would say political corruption. That's the reason why you're here. If it wasn't if they did things right in the beginning, you wouldn't be here. And that's why we're frustrated. They didn't have a legal right to move forward on Mauna Kea. They didn't have the permits they needed to go forward on Mauna Kea and uprise our people. This is why we're frustrated. Now, if you want meaningful conversation, you gotta listen. You should already know. If you go on YouTube, you see the cries and tears and sadness of our people because of TMT. TMT will not be built on this island, not on this fauna at all. I promise you, you're going to be wasting your time and your money, because none of us is going to stand down. I was arrested because I have to, it's my kuleana to protect our sacredness of our aina and our people. I entered into a contested case hearing that was totally biased. And the Supreme Court ruled on legal strategy, the process. Was it right? No, it wasn't right. You think astronomy did anything for us, Hawaiian people? You think astronomy did anything to help our land, our resources? Nothing. Astronomy to me is like throwing away money because you want to look for another place to live on. You think you're going to reach there? Listen to me now. There's a lot of people came here and taught us their religion. But they don't even believe their own religion. That's why they're looking into space to see if there is a real God. We already know our course, our care. We know what they do for our people. Thousands of years our people lived in the middle of the Pacific. Healthy people, thriving people, loving people. New people came to our lands and we accepted them with aloha. Like I would have aloha you tonight, but when you start rattling on about how good astronomy is going to do for us, when our world is falling apart, I'm sorry that I have to lose my couple of law, but enough is enough. Our only TMT. Thank you.
Don't fund it. Don't fund it. Tell them don't fund TMT.
One more thing. I would advise you do not fund TMT because there was a corrupt process and you're going to be part of that corruption.
Alexis Kerber. After Alexis Kerber will be Auntie Mommy Green. Thank you.
Was there somebody before me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. The gentleman who just spoke, and I don't think we had him on the list.
It's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Anybody else?
That's all right.
Not anybody else? Kupuna. You know, Hawaiian tradition and culture
Yeah.
is something that's very important to me. I just like everybody know that right away. I respect everybody. Wrote down some notes I'd like to share with you folks during school peace gesture. My name is Kekua Alip. I'm here to testify as a Kanaka Maoli, born and raised here in Kona. I work up on the telescopes on Mauna Kea. So, however, I come to you and I speak to you from me, from my know, from who I am. Yeah, I don't represent anybody else. I'm a proud Native Hawaiian, and I understand many of the issues that people have brought up. You know, not just today, yesterday, day before, for decades. But I want people to know that there are Native Hawaiians like me who support astronomy on Mauna Kea. I want to see Hawaiians leading astronomy on Mauna Kea. We're explorers by nature. It's in our DNA. Our ancestors were forward thinkers who navigated oceans way farther than anyone else on the planet. We should continue their legacy and integrate the wisdom of traditional Hawaiian knowledge and contemporary astronomy. The world should be learning about astronomy from us, the Kanakas. I understand the management of astronomy on Mauna Kea hasn't always been fair. A lot of people feel astronomy has grown without any checks and balances. That has to change. I'm hopeful that this new stewardship authority for Mauna Kea will be able to change that. So how can we move forward? We have to be brave and have these tough conversations. I think people like me who support astronomy have felt a fear and the conflict, and we don't want to offend our friends, our family, who might have different opinions from us. It's hard to speak up.
You know, it's easy for go we want group and planning, you know, strength in numbers. It's really hard to speak up. But I felt the need for my voice to be heard today. I couldn't just stand in the back and say nothing. Ultimately, the community will decide what is best for Mauna Kea. But for the sake of us all, I hope we can come together and figure this out. Mahalo for the opportunity for testifying today. Thank you.
Thank you.
The community has already decided.
Alexis Kerber?
Aloha. I was not born in Hawaii. I was born in Lake Tahoe. I'm not Kanaka Maoli, but Hawaii is my home. I will never live anywhere else but here, and I don't think that you need to be Kanaka Maoli to realize what Mauna Kea is. What Mauna Kea is to the people that are here. So I do not consent to the construction of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea, and I adamantly oppose to the funding on the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. And I understand that you guys as a National Science Foundation need that clarity to be spoken. So I won't provide any other words, but that clarity and that I do not consent.
Thank you. Auntie Romy Green?
I don't want to stand with my neck.
You want to share, Moby?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. I love you all. I love you too.
Billy right there is my cousin, the first speaker. His mother is my grandmother's baby sister. We are from the windward side of Oahu and Honolulu. My ahupua'a is Puhe'emiki, where we lived for hundreds of years. I can't even step foot over there now. I want my land back. I want our land back. This is not going to go on much longer. It's not going to do it. It's not going to work because it's heva. It's wrong. I'm going to tell you guys something right now. And a lot of people don't like it when I do it, but I tell the truth. My grandmother walked from Honolulu to Haula School, which is almost 3 miles, at 6 years old, when America came and forced them to go to school. She walked to school, she got in there, and she, hi, aloha. They speak to her in English. She doesn't speak English, she never did. And what did they do? They told her to do this. And what did they do? They beat her. They beat her until she bled. My poor grandmother, who didn't know what was going on because she couldn't speak English. She'd go home, go out to the taro patch, go do what your job, you've got to do taro patch, that's how we live. They tell her, she goes, she cannot, her fingers are all bloody. And what happens? She gets beaten again. This gotta stop. Stop doing this to indigenous peoples. My great-grandfather, Joseph Iokeba Ahuna, his sister was born with a severe birth defect, congenital. Unfortunately, I was born with it too. This is me, okay? This is me, okay? This is my congenital birth defect. It is, I am cut in half. I am half. This congenital birth defect, also known as KP, and Ken, if there are any physicians here, The day I was born, I was supposed to die. They told my mother, she's gonna die, your baby's gonna die. You see my hand? My hand has no blood. Right now, it's all purple. Because I'm cold in here. Because this is how I was born. And this is how I've lived, and I'm 71 years old. And I ain't going anywhere. I'm here for my grandmother. In 2015, my mother was diagnosed with, so many Hawaiians were diagnosed, and other indigenous peoples, from being poisoned and crapped up. My mother had stage 4 cancer from her throat to her rear end. 2015, they diagnosed it, stage 4, you're going. You know what my mother did to me? Mow me. It's okay, Mom, I do whatever you need. I'm right there. Until the day she died. But this is what happened. She told me, mow me. I was going up to the mountain already, 2014, 2015, when we stopped. The blessing that was going on with Daniel Kaka, my relative too. She told me, Momi, you are not to ever stop going to our Mauna. You were born, you didn't die. You have a job to do, and I am doing this job for my Ohana and everyone else's together, because we can't do it alone. I love all of you. And remember, if anybody ever has a child born with a birth defect, please think of me. Because I'm 71, I didn't die. I do not have any blood running from my on my left side at all. A return. I have no deep venous return in any of my left side. They don't know why I'm still here. But I am. Mahalo ke akoa.
Thank you. Sarah Kihoi.
Oh, I gotta say one more thing.
The key phrase.
I do not consent to any more destruction of our aquifer. This is the water of the people. No more. It's over. And when I have to go back on the yellow line of the Ala Kupuna and sleep with my army cot under a tent for 7 months without a shower, I'll do it again.
Sarah Kihoi.
I just want to give this who just spoke, all these that just spoke before. Let's give them a big hand. My heart is filled. My na'au is stirring. My kupuna has been invited and they're here. You might see a lot of empty seats, but they're here because we invited them. So we thank you for coming to listen. We thank you. Let's just take a deep breath. I come from a prolific family of navigators and voyagers for thousands of years.
So the Mauna is a beacon of light for us in life. When you're in the middle of the ocean for days and months, as the Hokulea, our mother's ship. They're doing it right now. It's not on the past, on the side. It's not in the closet. They're teaching young navigators right now as we speak. We don't need to have big telescopes. We can read the stars. Okay? It's been proven. We've done it many years and we're doing it again. As you've heard the different dialogues that we just heard just now, our culture has been thrown out, spit it out, on the ground, pick it up. We just want to rise now. We're rising. We've been kind. Aloha, come, come, come. People just took. Take. That's all it was. No talk, just take. Just take. It's time to give now. It's time to give. Enough. Okay? Enough. Because I want to just say before I forget, I do not consent to the construction of the 30-meter telescope. Ew! I adamantly oppose any funding. Ew! And there's other alternatives somewhere else. Okay? We're not going to budge. It's the way it goes. This is sacred land we're talking. It's conservation lands. Okay? I come as an administrator to education for many years of my life. I've taught kids that didn't want to learn, and I loved it. Because they learn in different ways. Science is different values of science. Different layers. We have our own science. We don't need to. We had hundreds of words for the word rain. Hundreds of words for the word wind. We could feel it. It was a name to it. That's how close we were. Okay? That's how close we were. We don't need to learn it in a book. Okay, just know there's different styles of learning and different educational ways of how to learn. So our people learn by doing, not by talking, and not putting in little graphs and little pieces and little squares. We're out there in the element, just like our navigators. Mau Pi Look, I want to Papa Mau. To know where you are going, you need to know where you come from. Okay? You can say it the other way. To know where you come from is where you know where you're going. So there's a Kona to that, the hidden meaning. You gotta know where you're going. You gotta know your ancestors. You gotta know the whole sculpture. Be the whole sculpture. Come, Helimai, Aloha. Okay, that's what we do. We've been doing it for so long. So now it's a time and a place to just say enough. And so how do we do? What's the alternatives we have here? Find other places. Those telescopes that are sitting there defunct never got cleaned up. It's a mess. People talk, and they never got their pieces done. Okay? That's a black and white thing. When you look at the Mauna, you're in Waimea, you see this ugly looking thing glaring at you that's dysfunctional. You know, I say you go into somebody's house, you don't mind if I make a mess in your yard, huh? Okay, then you make another mess, and you make another mess, and it stays there. They say, oh, you don't mind if I build an 18-story high telescope and I'm going to dig down into your ground and just pound the heck out of it, ruin the water sources. You don't mind, huh? You don't mind. Ruin it for life? It's conservation land. Come on, people, wake up. Okay? I know you're getting it, okay? Before you leave tonight, and if you sleep tonight, just hear the words. Because I speak for my Mo'opuna, who was conceived on that Mauna. My grandchild, okay? And I speak for my grandparents from many, many years ago, the Voyagers. So, with my heavy heart, I plead with you. I plead with you to listen, not only with your head, okay, but with your heart. And your na'au. We speak with na'au over here, our gut, okay? We don't just talk like that, okay? It's deep. Okay, we go deep. Okay, so just remember that. If you take away anything, just remember our kupuna are watching right now. We gotta make them proud, okay? That's our kuleana. Okay, remember, you gotta know where you're going. And and you gotta know where you come from. And remember, we are the host culture. So please listen. I appreciate that. Mahalo.
After Julie Stowe will be Ehalani Kahio.
So I gave testimony in Hilo a couple nights ago, but tonight I am giving testimony for a kupuna that couldn't make it to Hilo. Her car had a flat tire, and it still does. So she asked me to share her words tonight. This is from Susan Rozier. Good evening. My testimony tonight is confined to one area. Ola ikavai. Water is life. My experience in this field comes from an on-the-ground, upfront, and personal experiences in the late 1980s and early 1990s, moving heavy equipment all over Maui, and ownership of 4 water trucks rented out with drivers on various job sites throughout Maui County. Business owners in this field must be very familiar with the local laws and permits, as well as the USA federal laws pertaining to these activities. The following information and inquisition is based in United States federal law. Clean Water Act, Section 4, Dust Control and Stabilization. TMT, TIO, ELT has purposefully always in every document made public addressed only the stormwater portion of the Clean Water Act, and not the hundreds of thousands of gallons of water required by the section on fugitive dust control, federal wording, not mine, Chapter 1200-3-8 in their construction activities. You shall see below the amount of water required by federal law. You will also understand the probability for pollution of all waterways produced by Mauna Kea is quite significant. Best management practices. The only BMPs listed in the NPDES permit application in permit number HI S000431 concerns themselves solely with track out, carry out, spillage, and erosion. The BMPs, and therefore all the permit applications, which would most likely be cut and pasted into future documents, do not conform the best management practices described below, paragraph A, by the EPA, nor have any documents included dust control practices as required by the EPA. Please see below a few examples from the Clean Water Act as listed in paragraph B. A, BMP's definition, the best management practices, means schedules of activities, prohibitions, or designations of practices, maintenance procedures, and other management practices to prevent or reduce the pollution of state waters. BMP also includes treatment requirements, operating procedures, and practices to control plant site runoff, spillage or leaks, sludge or waste disposal, or drainage from raw material storage. B, EPA dust control plan examples. Water must be applied continually in front of or in conjunction with a scraper, grader, dozer. Rule of thumb, area cannot dry out. Acre foot of water equals 325,851 gallons per acre of land. Federal legal definition, not mine. C, water applied behind equipment is usually intended for compaction purposes and not dust control. Included in this law are the continual wetting of materials and stockpiles on site. The site in question is extremely windy most of the time, and the 13 other observatories on the summit all have extremely sensitive equipment that could easily be damaged by clouds of dust whipping over the northern plateau. The receiving waters, 4 gulches, 2 dropping into the Waimea side, are listed as receiving waters. None of these gulches, according to the NPDES permit application, have any previous testing and therefore no base of information on what exactly the makeup of the water currently is. Without a baseline, how can there be a determination if the permittee has conformed to the law? Or maybe that's the plan. In the case of the Wailuku River, there is data. TIO, TMT has listed only on their latest of the 3 NPDES applications NO3 and NO2 both of which are nitrates, one of which is a fertilizer. The distance of the Wailuku River, Hilo side, from the two project sites, Waimea side, is many miles, yet the permit does not include the route. Will roads be built? The discharge point is listed by latitude and longitude. NO3, which is also a fertilizer, is used as a blasting compound, and therefore it is reasonable to assume its intended use is in the drilling and blasting of the 20 feet deep footings and the 21 feet deep, 20 feet long tunnel. And yes, track drills were moved by my company, and my extended education about this process was through my husband's best friend, whom we fondly called the Master Blaster. The public has the right to question, how would this blasting compound come to be discharged into the Wailuku River? What quantity of this blasting compound is intended to be discharged into this river? What effect would this fertilizing compound have on the fish, the fauna of the major source of water for Hilo that empties into various other streams along the North Hilo coastline, which empties into the ocean via various gulches and streams along the Hampakua coastline? Let's not forget all of Hilo's various ponds that line the ocean side. Wailuku River is also the main supplier of the Mauna Loa aquifer. What we have here with this 30-meter telescope called TMT, then TIO, and now through the NSF is referred to as the ELT, the extra large telescope. What we have here is multiple corporate entities who have purposefully reduced their scope of actions regarding the NEPA and Clean Water Act, CWA, to addressing only stormwater runoffs and not the enormous amount of water required by federal law to be sprayed lavishly for dust control on the Northern Plateau and staging area concrete batch plant. An acre-foot of water equals 325,851 gallons per acre of land. The job site on the pristine Northern Plateau is 11 acres that, according to the Clean Water Act, cannot dry out. What's 11 times 325,851? 3,584,361 gallons. That's a lot of trucks coming up and down the mountain. No wonder the water delivery company in Puna bought 15 tanker trucks with sleeper cabs 5 years ago. Where's that sprayed water eventually going to go? Waimea aquifer, with whatever it washed off the materials and stockpiles on the pristine Northern Plateau? There are 2 TMK parcels listed. We would be remiss not to add the project base yard, which would be staging the area, and cement batch plant. This location runoff flows in 2 directions. First area consists of 2 gulches, which supply 3 springs. That is the only fresh water in the saddle area between Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. As you travel over Daniel K. and Noe Highway, you will notice Pohakuloa training area on the Kona side of the road. On the other side, next to Mauna Kea Park, you see 3 galvanized water tanks, which provide fresh water from these 3 springs for the military personnel across the highway. It is not understandable that the general public would question the sensibility of a cement batch plant about these freshwater springs. That area was used for all these observatories since the late 1960s. One would think the University of Hawaii would choose another area away from Pohakuloa Gulch. However, sadly, their track record shows there is no concern for the environment. No water quality baseline has been established for this water, yet these 3 springs within the supplying these 2 gulches are listed by TMT as receiving waters from the telescope project. Receiving polluted waters from a base yard staging area cement batch plant that by law must be constantly sprayed by water trucks is a minimum volume. 1 acre of water equals 325,851 gallons per acre of land. Looking at the map of that base yard, anyone can clearly see the other side of the staging area puts sacred Lake Waiau in danger of severe water runoff pollution. In this era of ecological concerns, I do not understand how the National Science Foundation can even entertain the notion of funding this project. These lands in Mauna Kea are crown lands, belonging to the royal families who are heirs to the royal patents of the Great Mahele of 1838, which by international law and the Mahele document definition can never be sold or given to anyone. These lands and others are held in trust. As far as many now easily see, the Crown and Hawaiian Kingdom lands have only been used and abused by the self-proclaimed trustees, which is the illegal occupying corporate entity called the State of Hawaii. Now the question is, will the NSF join in the desecration of Hawaii to the tune of $850 million? Or will you help us save the last pristine parcel of land near the summit of the most sacred mountain in all of Polynesia? Will you help us save the precious fresh waters of our home, Hawaii Island, the most isolated place on earth? Susan Rozier. Mahalo.
Thank you. Could we please have Helani Kahil, and then we'll be taking a 10-minute break.
Aloha mai kako.
Aloha.
My name is Helani Kahil. I'm a descendant of many of my kupuna from 3 of the main islands here, Molokai, Maui, and Oahu. I work in Kona now. I say this with a lot of love for this place. Every day, I have to watch it desecrated. Every day, I have to patiently talk to people about how sacred a place this place is. For me, it's hard to stand here because I'm not a public talker. I work a lot in the communities and with schools, and a lot of children throughout my years. And been involved in a lot of important things here in Hawaii. Fortunately, they have not been the destruction of things here. They've been to help to sustain things here, which is what we need desperately. We don't need another telescope on the top of the sacred mountain. Just like the place where I work, we don't need it to be defined as a beach, as a park, as a place for people to come to and not know its significance. A very important significance in our culture. So today I stand, and I don't want to be long because I totally will and always be against anything that is not driven by our people. And basically a place is a people, and its people are one and the same. That's who we are, together. On the mountain, at the ocean, everywhere. So mahalo. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as you're taking your seats, one thing that I forgot to do, I meant to do at the very beginning of the comments, was that for folks at Hilo who didn't get an opportunity to speak but had signed up, but because we ran for 4 hours and didn't have any time left, folks can we please have it quiet so we can hear you? So if you are one of those, I know of one person from Hilo who didn't have a chance to talk before. If anybody else did not have an opportunity to provide comments at Hilo, would you please let us know, and we'll put you up toward the front of the line. Okay? Keep yours. Yeah. Yes. What we'll do is we'll first start with Okaki Kanuha, and then we'll go to the person who did not have an opportunity to speak at Hilo.
Aloha nui kako. Aloha. First of all, just get straight to the point. I oppose the building of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. I do not consent to the building of it. I oppose adamantly any funding from NSF to build the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. Now, as you acknowledged, Caroline, we've gone through this so many times, right? So it's really infuriating, frustrating that we have to go through this again, right? Because to even entertain this question allows you or anybody else to pretend that the last 8 to 12 years never happened. Yeah, it allows us to pretend that the groundbreaking ceremony that was supposed to take place in 2014 never happened, that it never got shut down. It pretends that in 2015, when the TMT trucks tried to get up the Mauna, that they were not blocked for 4 months. It pretends that in 2019, that Kupuna and Kiai did not block a road for 8 months and stop the progression of the TMT telescope and their machines up the Mauna. All of these things have happened. Every single step of the way through the processes, and this process, and this process, and that process, and their process, and their process, Kanaka have stood strongly against it. Every contested case hearing, our people have opposed the building of the telescope. We have never, ever consented. And so if we want to talk a little bit about the environmental impacts, here in Hawaii, it's very different from the American worldview. In Hawaii, the people are a part of the environment. Right? Lavahi says, "O waila ko makuahine, o waila ko kupuna wahine, o ka aina no." We are part of Aina. The land that we live on is called Aina. Aina is not just land. Aina is land that is inhabited by Kanaka, people who share a reciprocal relationship with that land. You hurt the land, you hurt the people. You hurt the people, you hurt the land. And so, I wanted to acknowledge, I think it was Kekoa, Brother Kekoa, who came up and gave his testimony. Because, as he acknowledged, he's in the minority. And I respect the fact that he came and talked up and spoke his mind anyway. But that position that he is in right now, that he felt to be in, is the position that our people have been in for the last 120 years. We've been silenced. And Timon, talked about it, beaten. But things are changing. Our people are aware. We want to talk about Hawaiian culture. We know our culture, we know our history, and therefore, we have decided every single step along the way to resist, to oppose, and to stop the building of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. So I want to ask the people, if you oppose the building of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea, I want to hear a kukia imauna. Kukia imauna. If you do not consent to the funding of the TMT telescope by the NSF, I want to hear a kukia imauna. Kukia imauna. And if you are going to be on Mauna Kea, if this foundation decides to fund the 30-meter telescope, I want you to stand up. If you are willing to protect Mauna Kea from any further desecration, I want you to come stand with me right here, right in this aisle. We are adamantly, in every way, shape, fashion, form, against the TMT telescope being placed on Mauna Kea. We are against any funding for that telescope. But if, in fact, you decide to throw $850 million to this project, this, right here, is what you will be met with. This is what your $850 million will get you. The way it happened in 2019, the way it happened in 2015, the way it happened in 2014, it's not over. Every step of the way we've been there, every step of the way we've gotten stronger, we've gotten more organized, and our numbers have increased. And so, when we talk about the environmental impact and the relationship to Kanaka, not only will you hurt the people who stand here, you're going to hurt the ones who stood in Hilo, you're going to hurt the ones who stood in Ha'u, you're going to hurt the ones who will stand tomorrow in Waimea, you're going to hurt the ones from Maui, you're going to hurt the ones from Molokai, you're going to hurt the ones from Kauai, you're going to hurt the ones from Oahu, you're going to hurt all of these people. And not just us. There may be some people who are sitting down. There are others who do not agree with us, as we had Brother Kekoa earlier. But because you folks have decided to come here to ask this question, not only do you hurt these people, but you, like in the past, these past efforts will tear apart our community, our families, our friendships, and our relationships. The only reason why me and Brother Kekoa disagree is because you folks are here asking this question. I bet you me and that guy get along really well. I bet you and me agree on a lot of things. But this is one thing that has torn apart our community. We have aunties and uncles and grandfathers and grandmothers and cousins and friends who have been forced to arrest their own people in the name of science. Science without humanity. So do as you will. We've made it clear where we stand. We oppose the building. We do not consent to it. We oppose the funding. But more importantly, we will not allow it. Throw the money where you want. This is what you'll get. Kukia imauna! Kukia imauna! Kukia imauna! Kukia imauna! Mahalo.
Clean up the telescopes that are there. There's a speaker, Kiwina de Soto, who was at Hilo, didn't have an opportunity to speak. So we'll just move straight to Kiwina de Soto as the next speaker. And folks, just as a reminder, although we absolutely despise putting time limits on people, we do want to make sure that people have, as many people have an opportunity to speak as possible. If you could please try to limit your remarks to 2 minutes. We will put reminders on the screen, but if everybody keeps going over, not everybody will be able to speak. So please try to be respectful of other people's times. Thank you. Go ahead, thank you.
Aloha. Got late to Hilo, made it to Ka'u. I'm here in Kona. I was a little shy to speak, but as you spent your entire life, most of you, pursuing your education of science, I've spent most of my entire life pursuing the freedom of spirituality. And before I even begin, I'm up here because 2 of my kumu, kupuna, have made it over to the spirit world recently. Hank Bergstrom. Yo. And my other personal friend and experienced hiker, native lover of all of Hawaii, Nate Ewan, who loved the Mauna. Heyo! Kukiai Mauna! Kukiai Mauna! Mahalos. For as their recent journey into the unknown, as you have spoken, do we have spiritual terrestrial relatives out there? Are there other places that people go and that we get to meet with them again? Nakapuna, Israel Kamakamioli, he lent it to us in a song that says, Hawaiians, you know, they live in 2 worlds. I got to know many Hawaiians to really get to know what that meant. Now, Mauna Kea, Mauna Owaikea, is the place for that spirituality of the culture of Kanaka Maoli. To go and see into the worlds where your science will not let you see. We'll go to visit to those inhabited worlds of love and light, where aloha is present. We get there through that spiritual evolution of a personal, intimate connection to the nature of who we are and respecting the culture of where we live. So I'm speaking a little bit from the idea that you're pursuing through science pretty much like a cart is trying to lead the horse. There's evidence on this planet you share with all of us since 1955 that gives you proof without a doubt your own fellow professionals in astronomy, astrophysics, astrology, geology, and much more have claimed to be true. And yet, when I did a poll on every one of you last night, if you are even familiar with this information that's been available to you during your lifetime of study, each one of you said no. So I only claim this. There is no reason for the obsolete and limited scientific approach to going and finding out your spiritual nature, our spiritual nature, the universe's spiritual nature through the limited applications of your science. Now I challenge you, and I challenge myself to educate anything that you may need to know about what you might see from looking at the top of Mauna Kea. Because by doing that, you now come away from being a foundation for somebody else to spend their money to desecrate a culture and harm their spiritual access. You have the opportunity to become a fellowship instead of a foundation. And by doing so, you'll see what we see. You'll feel what we feel. And you may someday become to know what we know. I animally oppose the TMT being built on Mauna Kea. I beg to you to save your money and withdraw any fundings for this project. It's obsolete, it's unneeded, and it would do a long ways to say to all of these people that you care. Mahalo aloha.
Thank you. Andre Perez, followed by Malika Lincoln. Andre Perez.
Aloha kako. Aloha. My name is Andre Perez, and I'm here to testify to you, NSF, that one, we do not consent, I do not consent to TMT being constructed on Mauna Kea. We are asking you, as you've heard very clearly, do not fund TMT. As one of your action items on your board over there, I am requesting, and as you've heard the sentiment from many here, no action. For you folks to come here now to Hawaii is an insult to us. We have been resisting, we have been opposing TMT for well over a decade. There have been contested case hearings, there have been multiple Supreme Court lawsuits, and if you don't understand that the people of Hawaii do not want TMT on Mauna Kea, then you're not listening. We know that we are committed and dedicated to protecting the Mauna. If you fund TMT, TMT will be met with prolonged, protracted civil resistance like Hawaii has never seen before, because we saw the same thing in 2019. We occupied the Mauna for 6 months. Our community did, many people in this room, in 2015, up on the Mauna at 9,000 feet for 6 months. In 2019, we occupied Pu'uhuluhulu for 8.5 months, and we shut down that road to protect our Mauna from TMT. Are you not listening? And to come here now and to tell us that you want to be objective, and at the same time telling us you're objective, saying that, oh, by the way, astronomy is my favorite science, is an insult. And it's not good PR facilitation. I challenge you to go back and read a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, to come here at this heightened, sensitive, painful time for our people and tell us that your favorite science is TMT while simultaneously facilitating public input for funding TMT. Sorry, your favorite science is astronomy, while saying that you're here to be objective, is an insult, and it's painful, and it's a completely poor choice of words. Challenge you to rethink that one next time. So I'm here to say that we will meet TMT with massive civil resistance. Our people are committed. We will be on the Mauna for as long as it takes if they attempt to construct TMT. And Ms. Blanco, we know what your role was in facilitating the DKIST telescope on Haleakala. Some of our people, some of our Hawaiian people got hurt protesting that telescope. And here you are again facilitating this. We know who you are, we know what you did on Maui. And we reject NSF support for TMT, we reject the TMT, we reject NSF coming here and trying to facilitate more public input when we've been saying a resounding no for well over a decade. Time to open up your eyes, open up your ears, and listen. Listen. Mahalo.
Aloha. My name is Mileka Lincoln. You started tonight's meeting claiming that you guys are here because you want to have a better understanding of how this community feels. It's really hard to believe that you could have done any amount of research before arriving here to not know exactly how this community feels. In fact, your statements lead me to believe that you must have given no effort nor respect to understand the history of opposition to the construction of the 30-meter telescope. While you here from NSF may be new to this process, our people most certainly are not. You claim to want to know if you got your plan right or perhaps did not get it right. So let me say this for you as clearly as I possibly can. There is no plan that we support that will allow for the construction of the 30-meter telescope upon our sacred Mauna Kea. No, you do not have our consent. No, you will never have our consent. No, NSF should not fund the 30-meter telescope. And no, if you do, you will never successfully build it. No, NSF should in fact never support the further development of any structure on Mauna Kea. No, there is no plan, no matter who you guys select to, quote, manage it responsibly, that we will support if it involves the construction of the 30-meter telescope on this island, on any of our sacred space. This is not meaningful consultation. This is harassment. As my brother Andre just said, your presence here is insulting. Look at how you are further fracturing, further dividing, further tearing this community apart. The trauma is real, and you guys are contributing to the deterioration of relationships by claiming to be here in neutrality as a funding source of a project that our people has said no to time and time again. This is yet another attempt to manufacture consent after years of clear opposition. It highlights your ignorance to the strength and the commitment of our kia'i. And it magnifies the disingenuous nature of this entire process. You are not here to convince. You are here to further colonize. And Hawaii is pau. We've played by all the made-up rules, but we will no longer legitimize attempts to bulldoze our people, our culture, or our sacred spaces. A'ole, TMT. You don't know what you don't know. So let us pretend that in fact, you knew nothing before you arrived here. But now you know better. So do better. Be better. We demand better. I do not consent to the construction of the 30-meter telescope upon Mauna Kea, and I adamantly oppose NSF funding to the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. Kukia'i Mauna.
Marie Burns, followed by Earl Zellyoung. Marie Burns.
Good evening. I did share last night in Ka'u on my behalf. Tonight I stand on behalf of my sister, Leah Burns. Does anybody remember Leah Burns? She spent quality time of her life up on that mountain, blowing her poo, kanikapoo. Anybody? Woo! That was her kuleana. She went everywhere with that. Thank you. Thank you. She went everywhere with that poo. She always had her Hawaiian flag. She sacrificed her life and she has health issues and she can't make it here. And it's kind of hard for me, but to stand on her behalf. But she, I can't really talk for her. I just want to blow my poo. I just can't do it as good as her, but I know about. Thank you. Anybody blow your poo for my sister, Leah Burns? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to highlight some of the things my sister has done as a Hawaiian activist. It's not really clear. She has a little mental issues from being hit in the head after being arrested and beaten up by the cops so many times. And I don't know, I'm wondering if any officers might know her and give me a little information on the insight. But she's a little confused in the head right now. But I know she spent quality time up on that mountain while I was lost in the slave trade. Anybody relate to that, lost in the slave trade? You know, I decided to leave the slave trade, and you know, I need to spend more time. I need to be, you know, anyway. But 30 seconds left. Oh yeah, so she did. I want to tell you guys. I don't know if you guys know, and she in like 2016 or 17, she went up to Washington D.C. with her Hawaiian flag and her conch shell, and she lived on the streets of Washington D.C. I said, Leah, the streets of Washington, D.C. are not like the streets of not like being homeless in Hawaii where we're all family and we all take care of each other, not like homeless in Hilo and you're carrying your flag and you're getting arrested for planting taro in front of the King Kamehameha flag with Uncle Abel. Anyways, where's Uncle Abel too? We should blow the poo for him. But anyway, you know, those kinds of things, you know, she's a real criminal. She got arrested for planting food in state land in front of the King Kamehameha statue, you know, real criminalized. But she went all the way up to Washington, D.C. of her own finances, of her own accord, and she lived on the streets of Washington, D.C. just to do her own independent protesting and trying to bring attention to the Hawaiian people and what's happening with the Hawaiian people in our own way. So anyway, this one's for Leah. Anyway, just blow your poo again. Thank you. So she will never consent to TMT. She will never consent to any of it. She's a'ole, even no matter how many times she got beaten up by the cops as an activist.
Earl Delia.
Aloha. First of all, I'd like to recognize you guys for being here. Give yourself a big hand to stand, to come, to spend your time. You could be any place else, but you are here tonight to stand as one underneath the sun.
Excuse me. She can't understand you. Maybe try this other microphone, would you mind? There's some static on it. Thank you. Yeah.
Check away.
We want to be sure you're...
Mahalo to you guys for being here. But it's going to be so many exquisite testimonies today. First and foremost, Mahalo Keakua. He's the first one. Eo. We thank him first. Secondly, I am totally in opposition of any development or desecration of Mauna Awakea, our sacred Mauna. I am in total opposition to any funding from NSF Foundation. Totally. You're going to hear testimonies everywhere. I'd like to first acknowledge you guys for coming here. Thank you for that. But there's many more islands out here that you need to hear from. And everything she's taking down, I hope it's not going to your boss that's going to go in the rubbish can and it's going to be done something with it. Because there's 160 to 200,000 signatures, a petition out there already existing in total opposition, and you're here like you never did any research or know that. That's very sad. So go back and do your homework. The takeaway tonight, what can you guys do to give back to Mauna Kea? I've been up there for 8 months. I've never seen the Mauna so peaceful in my life. When we blocked that place, there was no lights going up and down, up and down, up and down the mountain anymore. There was peace, there was quiet. But I've watched kupunas sacrifice their lives on a mountain. 85 years old elders in wheelchairs, sleeping on the roadside to stop the desecration, should send a message to you and tell you, I'll TMT. If that doesn't, then don't do it. I don't know what else can. You have to hear the people. In order to hear the people, ho'oloi, you have to listen to the people. Mahalo, everybody. Mahalo.
Thank you. Marie Alohalani Brown.
Can I have that? Thank you. Aloha mai takou. Aloha. Countless generations of my Hawaiian ancestors' bones are buried in Ho'okena at the foot of Mauna Loa. I grew up practicing our culture and our religion. I was one of the kupuna arrested on July 17th, 2019, while trying to protect Mauna Kea. The Mauna is sacred, and I'm going to talk about trauma, religion, but first I want to say, I do not consent to the construction of the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. I adamantly oppose funding the 30-meter telescope on Mauna Kea. Now, 2 minutes isn't nearly enough to do justice to all the things that you folks need to know, right? So I'll be writing a very long testimony. In addition to being a cultural practitioner, I am also a professor, an associate professor of Hawaiian religion for the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I am one of the handful of people who make the backbone of their careers researching Hawaiian language archives. Why is that important? Because our kupuna left us a legacy in private manuscripts, in Hawaiian language newspapers from 1834 to 1948. And in those papers, we find testimony about the continuity of Hawaiian religion. Now, why is that important? Because our detractors have sought to undermine the validity of our claims on the basis that our religion is defunct. If you can read Hawaiian, you can read, beginning in 1820, the words of missionaries, other foreigners, and Hawaiians from 1820 on, all the way to present day. Let me tell you about trauma. This is what I do. I research. We are a people who have experienced historical trauma at the hands of settlers. Let me list you all the many ways. Demographic collapse from epidemics because we introduced diseases, land dispossession, destruction of cultural and natural resources, destruction or desecration of sacred sites, loss of language, culture, and identity from imposed assimilation and blood quantum laws, being reduced to stereotypes, cultural appropriation, religious discrimination, sexual objectification, marginalization in our own homeland, hate speech, and othered as uncivilized or subhuman. In the light of this history, our opposition to TMT should come to no surprise. There's many different ways that we can be traumatized. When we were arrested on the Mauna, I didn't know what to expect other than what I had seen happening in Haleakala. I was expecting to be injured. Is this off? No, still. So I was expecting to be injured. I was terrified. But as someone who practices their culture and who truly believes that the Aina is my relative, I have no choice. It is my kuleana as a Hawaiian to protect the sacred. And if I have to lay down my life to do so, I will. There will never be consent. That young man, Kekoa, he implied that he was in the minority. That's a really important statement. You can take from that that the majority of Hawaiians do not want the TMT constructed. There were thousands that day as we were arrested, and we acted with the ethics of aloha that we call kapu aloha iya. And how many of you stood there quietly, respectfully, sending up your mana and your pule so that these arrests would go smoothly? And then when they dropped us off at the Mauna Loa access road, half a mile down, after they arrested us, they didn't take us to the hilo. And I walked back that half mile, and I thought, okay, that wasn't so bad. I'm not hurt. When I came back, there were SWAT, what do you call them, SWAT teams, yeah? Dressed as SWATs with an LRAD. It was absolutely terrifying. They were just waiting for any excuse to harm us. And I want to acknowledge our new leaders, Kaho'okahi, Konuha, Andre Perez, Kalekoa Ka'eo, Pua Case, Noinoi Wong Wilson, Billy Freitas and his wife Cynthia. Let me tell you why I'm acknowledging them. Because they trained us well. That they instilled in us an understanding of just how important that kapu aloha was, and that's the only reason that we didn't get hurt. Because all of you folks followed that. It's a kako thing, yeah? We're going to come in waves. I was there for 5 months. I ran the donation tent, Haleho'olako. Let me tell you, I lived there for 5 months. We worked 12 to 16 hours. There were thousands of people on the weekends. There was a steady crew of 100, sometimes a little bit more, but everybody took on their kuleana responsibilities. They came in waves. They flew in from around the world. This is going to be more. Be ethical. Be ethical. I understand that science is important, but not at the cost of humanity. Do not add to our trauma. Do not tear our community apart by making us talk about these things. I'm still traumatized by being arrested. You know, I have this card here that one of our leaders wrote, and it says, this is a statement that's really important. Any attempt at construction will result in further mass standoffs, which will affect the land, social resources, the mental and emotional health of the people involved. You know, one last thing. People who are pro-TMT, including certain politicians and astronomers, have sought to discredit those of us who are against the TMT. While we have been acting with the ethics of aloha, they've been playing dirty, and you need to know this if you don't already know this. Dismissing our religion, saying that our camp was filthy, that there was trash everywhere, that we were drinking and doing drugs. During a sacred stand? They tried everything they could to discredit us, but with enough visitors, thousands every week, right? And it gained global attention. And then they realized that those lies weren't going to work. Then they tried calling us anti-science. We are not anti-science, but we've had enough. You've heard my statements about the trauma that we have been subjected to. We are done. Do you know some of our kapuna, some of the kapuna are in this room right now? Do you know we made our last will and testament? Because we thought that we were going to die in the second round? They were telling us, the mountain medics were telling us, if you have breathing issues, you better go down because they're gonna, gas and everything like that. And we just kind of looked at each other and I go, let's go through our last testament and we'll die. It's okay. I'm willing to give my life up for the mountain. You don't understand. The Aina is my elder. It's my kupuna. The love that I feel and others, yeah? You folks too, yeah? The love we feel for the Aina is visceral, isn't it? Thank you. I'll be sending you a very long written statement, including my articles that are published in peer-reviewed journals about Mauna Kea and how it's sacred and the whole history of the continuity of Ho'omana. Yeah, I'm that person. Mahalo nui.
Thank you. Tanya Ayasazian, Balabachawa'i Markar.
Aloha, my name is Tanya Nasazi. I live in Pahoa. I, like many of you up here, were born and raised to have the settler mind. But I resist and I delete that programming. I do not consent to the construction of the 30mm telescope on Mauna Kea. I adamantly oppose any funding for the construction of TMT, and I support the no-build, no-action option on Mauna Kea. Period. It's conservation in ceded lands. And if they don't want, we settlers don't build. The persistence of this project has had a deep and wide negative impact on our island community and on the social, mental, and emotional health of everyone involved. Henry David Thoreau said, "It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see." I find it ironic you want to build a telescope to see and you cannot see what's right in front of you. You want to build, you have a need. And I don't understand this need to keep coming back, this need to build an even more giant telescope that can see millions of light years away. But will that allow scientists to be able to see what's right in front of them? Beautiful people, a beautiful culture, a beautiful mountain. Astronomers want to listen to computer simulations, sound, color, form, events that happen millions of light years away, millions of years ago, to teach them something that they do not know, something that they do not find within. And yet our state, UH, with the exception of incredible people like Maria Olani Brown here, and astronomers and scientists and foundations like you here, you've not listened to the Hawaiian people, but you want to listen to something in space millions of years away. To a simple person like me, this makes absolutely no sense. The Hawaiian people have so much to teach, and you want to go out there and learn, but you're not listening to the people who are willing to teach you right here. For 50 years, the Hawaiian people have spoken against construction on Mauna Kea. I've been engaged only on the sidelines for over a decade. The further you push, the more I will be there for them. Why does TMT keep coming back as if the Hawaiian people do not matter? As if the sacred does not exist? I find it fitting that literally what is at question here is whether or not to proceed in building a monstrous apparatus for humans to learn more about where we come from and our history and our beginnings so that we can understand more about who we are. But the Hawaiian people are right here in front of us, in flesh and blood. They are treated as if they're invisible, and you wish to further desecrate their land after everything they have already endured for fucking 130 years. Excuse my language. They are treated as if what they want, need, believe, and feel does not matter. We settlers must change. They know who they are. They know their place in the universe. It is we who must change and learn from them. For centuries, Native and Indigenous communities across this planet have been rendered invisible at the hands of white explorers and colonizers. That is what TMT represents to me. I call upon you and all those born into the settler mindset and programming. May we all wake up to the truth and the life that stands before us. Please, I beg you, let's stand alongside the Hawaiian people against this infuriating example of imperialism, corporatism under the guise of science, and please stop wasting our precious time and our precious resources. Stop stealing and pillaging the Earth's purest resources. Enough is enough. All TMT. Kukia Imana! Kukia Imana!
If anybody is missing a cell phone, if you could let me know, and we'll try to figure out if it's yours. Next speaker, Tawai Markart. I didn't get your name right. I greatly apologize. I'm trying.
Happens all the time. Aloha NSF, aloha Hui. My name is Tawai Markart. And as for me and my ohana, we oppose any construction on Mauna Kea, no matter what name you call it. You polish a turd, it's still a turd. And we also oppose you guys funding them and also funding the other telescopes too. But I'm sorry, I didn't prepare anything for tonight because it's actually our 6th anniversary. Happy anniversary today. And right before we left, we found out this is happening. I thought it was tomorrow, but we're here. Anyways, I don't understand, why do we have to look into space? What do we, if we find a planet 1 million light years away, we can't even go a fraction of a light year. We go, oh, there's a planet, cool. Then what? Nothing. Anyways, I got 2 babies at home I gotta go see. Thank you.
Thank you, congratulations. Kilio Kaloni? Kilio Kaloni or Kalani?
Kilio Kalani?
I spoke.
You did? Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. There you are. Okay. And Kalani Souza also spoke. He's left. Mona Trunai. Mona Trunai. Okay. La'aikoa Sanborn. Sorry.
Mr. Sanborn.
Mr. Sanborn, no. La'aikoa. Thank you. Oh, here. Thank you. Apologize for the name mistake in pronunciation.
Virina me ke aloha, o la ke au koe no kailua kona mai au. I think I was just talking with my daughter yesterday about what stories mean to our people, what the word ka'au means to our people. And beyond just the mythologies of our demigods, our gods, the things that give us spiritual mana, it gives us moral grounding. And I think that's one thing that besides the science, our people are very scientific people. Probably one of the most efficient farmers the world has ever seen, by far the best sailors. Mahalo Mapiailu for bringing that back to our people, by the way. The stories, yeah, like that's one thing that socially, when we're talking about generational trauma, we have to make the language functional so that, yes, we're going back to the source of who we are and recognizing our kupuna, but making those something that has reverence and has foundation in today's time. And when we're referencing stories like Wakia, Papahana, Muku, the area that you guys are thinking about building, that's like the Kanaka Jerusalem right there. Yeah, like me and my Kiki, it's not about a merit system, but we were, in 2019, we were one of the first families. We were probably the first family to hold space at the Yahoo. And while we were going to say our prayers, do our oldies to the best of our abilities with the knowledge that we've been given in the chain of generational trauma that we've experienced. We're finding bullets there. That has nothing to do with you folks, but that's just someone, you gotta see these things from a Kanaka's eyes, yeah? Like and when I did research on what kind of bullets those weren't bullets from like state level officials, yeah? Those were like military grade SAS rifles, like, and that's that. And when our kupuna are talking about bullying, that's real. Like that's beyond just the 95% population drop that we've suffered in a short amount of time. That's real. And when my kiki are going to the mount and saying, hey, some of our family members are saying that you're gonna go to jail again if you go up there. I'm scared, I don't wanna go. It strikes fear in the heart for us to ho'omau and continue those ka'au to make that something functional for my kiki, which I should have the right to do as a Kanaka on Hawaiian homelands. Yeah, those are not conservation lands, those are crown lands. Those lands were set aside by our ancestors early for the betterment of our people. To quote one of my good friends, don't hate rehabilitate. That's exactly what we did up there. That's why Haleokuhio was built, to test the jurisdictional boundaries of, hey, these lands are set aside for Kanaka to, that P1C1 parcel is a huge parcel. It stretches all the way from the military base all the way to where you guys are thinking about building. There's no families really living there except for one. Yeah? So that was a very transitional piece in some of the other things that have nothing to do with what your purpose is here tonight, but has a lot to do with the generational trauma that we're suffering when we're talking about stories, and we're talking about language, and we're talking. I'm telling my daughter these stories about when you're feeling anger, right? Yeah, here's your po'oa. Is it time to make or is it time to lonoa? Is it time to listen? Is it time to be very careful and calculated about the things that you say and the things that you do? Because you call a little ola, you call a little make. Yeah? And I think we all learned serious lessons on that mauna, each in our own varying degrees based on how much we wanted to be involved. And you can hear it in the quiver of my voice that because I want to be, I'm not, as much as I'm referencing Jerusalem, that is not what grounds me as a Kanaka on this island. Yeah, he hala he kukulu, he mauna. He hala he kukulu, he ahu. He hala he kukulu, he pohaku. He hala he kukulu, he kanaka, he kanaka. That's what we're building on that mountain. That's what we did. We rehabilitated our people on all levels. From people with PhDs to people that are like local heroes for various different reasons. Yeah, in our time, we created the stories for ourselves in our generation, and we could see, oh, this person is channeling this, that person is channeling that. Sometimes at a high level, sometimes we got to get better at our practices. And we should have every right to do that in those lands that are consecrated for us to be able to use without political prejudice, without economical prejudice. So I am firmly against the building of TMT. That is literally where our people started. So to build on that means to basically decentralize the meaning of who I am. Yeah, like that's everybody's mana, and everything that they're sharing is like, there's so much mana. I don't want to, but we gotta make these things functional. So rather than come at you in a way that, as somebody that's been charged with violent crimes in his past, you know what the mana taught me? How to do this. How to be unafraid. How to be unafraid of people that, you already see me this way, you only see this side of who I am. And that's okay, because that's, in a certain way, you think that's your job. But really what your job is to serve us. The governor's job is to serve the fact that The United States made an agreement with us in the Hawaiian Homestead Act to have lands where we could rehabilitate. We could do things like build haleʻukuhio, we could do things like build libraries, we could do things like have ahas 3 times a day for a matter of months, over a year, for some people that were that committed. And I can feel like I just had some kupuna come up to me, oh, different, Your Honor. Oh yeah, mahalo kumauna. Mahalo na no kupuna, yeah, no na kukuana, kukuru keia. Yeah, we're ahus on the aina. Yeah, that's what a Kanaka's job is. One of my kumus told me, whatever happens to the aina happens to the Kanaka. Whatever happens to the Kanaka happens to the aina. You cannot separate the relationship in the mind of a Kanaka. You cannot. Yeah, and the aina needs Kanaka to serve them the way that it's accustomed to being served, the way it's accustomed to being addressed. And that is not what's happening on that mauna. And we as Kanaka need aina to be able to continue to practice in Shirakiki why you don't need to be afraid. Why there are solutions in presenting ourselves with dignity and grace, and why we were taught to be hospitable even in times when there's a lot of hot energy going on. But my children should not be afraid to practice who they are. They should not have to find firearms or the residual damage thereof in places where we want to quote unquote worship. My name is La'a. La'a means to consecrate. That's why we were there at the Ahu. Because I knew my fellow Kanaka were going to be coming. And we picked up 3 bags of trash to kind of ho'omakau kauke kahua. No kamea la'a, for the things that are sacred to us. And so when we're hearing Tita's report about the logistical things that are going to happen when you're using that much water just to prevent dust, I mean, I've worked on construction sites. If we're talking about building the TMT at that scale, that's a lot of water that you're going to need to keep the dust down. Yeah, and that's such a waste of land and natural resources. You know, it just goes to show how when we're trying to give our keiki a foundation in believing in these ka'au so that they can ground themselves in them, it's hard for them to see it because there's no participation from other governing bodies that are actually supposed to be serving us. That trust is set aside for the beneficiaries, so that they can have homelands, so that they can practice, so that they can have spaces to pass on this kind of rehabilitation that strengthens us. Yeah. So without the hostility and without all the hoopla, please hear that. And please hear that we were very scientific, but to what ends are we going to continue to, for lack of a better word, prostitute ourselves and our aina for you to use the land the way that you see fit, but for my kiki to have to go to their altars and be afraid because they're finding the residual damage of what's already been done. Before you're going to build, you got to clean up. That's what I was taught too. And there's a lot of cleaning up that needs to be done in that mauna. Spiritually, physically, and politically too. Yeah, politically. So, walawa, mahalo nui.
Thank you. I see that Kalani Souza is here, so we call them to speak earlier.
I was in the hero, and the Jenny asked me to speak for Hank. You know, I missed that brother. So I did. I faithfully spoke what Hank wanted me to say. But I figure I need to get a chance to say what I want to say. And you know, when I do the opening, I'm talking from our kupuna. I hope you guys can feel that when I'm talking to you. So again, that's not what Kalani's saying. But what I say is only true for Kalani. It's not true for anyone else. This transformative moment that we are all experiencing, it's an interpersonal moment. It's the move from the 3rd dimension to the 4th dimension, where the two-dimensional pala has no meaning anymore, where we communicate in different ways with each other. We have always been on the forefront of this. There's not a doctrine of discovery. There's a doctrine of relationships. So thank you, brother, for being so forward and solid and coming with your words. We are scientists. I work in science. There's a lot of different kinds of science. There's the science of agronomics. There's the science of oceanography. There's the science of geology. There's a lot of stuff going on. So when I hear that they want to spend billions of dollars risking our aquifer while Red Hill is happening, while the Ridpack boys are burning half of the mountain and it's still on fire because they won't go on the federal land, I'm thinking to myself, bullshit. And we need better conversations, and we need better processes, so people can feel that they are part of a whole and healing community, not one that is divisive. Ayo? Ayo. And so I, for that reason, am opposed to any more financing up on the mountain. Science should be relevant. Why are we looking 13.5 billion light years to see beyond the microwave curtain? I am not opposed to astronomy. I used to work there at Bishop Museum. I'm not opposed to it. I am opposed to stupidity. And I want that to be on record. Right? We should not risk for irrelevant science. The latest theories, just for you science geeks, is we're probably inside a black hole. This is why dark matter and energy is teasing everything apart. Why it moves so distantly apart that we will never be able to get to these objects. So like my mom would say, why are you looking in the house next door if you don't keep going? Wow.
Next speaker. One more. Tiare Hewlin. And after this, we'll take a 10-minute break. And folks, I would ask that you please try to keep to your time if you can. We still have quite a list of people to speak. Thank you.
Aloha. Aloha. O Tiare Hewlin ko inoa. I came on behalf of my ohana. Well, I have not been here long. I married a local boy, and I've learned from him the importance of this mauna. He taught me that it was mauna awakea, so I will refer to it as mauna awakea. I believe there's mauna in names. And so it's important to call what it was. Back in the day, I also learned that the changing of the name was strategic to strip the sacredness of the name Mauna Awakea, which is the mountain of Awakea. I don't know why Keith is disputed about the spirituality of this mountain. I not only speak on my half, but my tupuna as well. There are many indigenous people that are not able to be here, but stand in solidarity with the kia'i of this mauna. I mention only two, Aotearoa and Samoa. And I say those because it is the koko in me, and I believe there is a connection. My keiki are Native Hawaiian through my husband, and as I come to learn and be here, I see the value of the perspective that we can learn, and I support it fully. I do not support the funding of this ELT, this extremely large telescope, which continually gets changed, which is bigger than a 30-meter telescope from what I hear, closer to 40, but it's something I hope you guys can clarify further. But I also, just as a warning, because I have not been here very long, but I just want to warn you of who you intend to get in bed with if you support this project. The UH system, I've only seen a facade of supporting Native Hawaiians, but fully support rape and destroy resources that make this place Hawaii. I encourage you guys to look at the partnerships in addition to all the testimony that's given of why you should not spend federal funding on this project, because it will not continue. As I mentioned, manifestation, TMT will not be built on Mauna Awakea, and I hope that you guys use your money wisely in other projects. Mahalo.
Thank you. It is now 8:27. At 8:37 we'll return, and the speakers will be Wayne K. Mahi, Claire Loprisi, and Nana Kapele. Okay? 8:37, thank you.
Take a break?
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
Perfect. Yep. Jesse, quick interview.
Me?
Quick interview, yeah, about the Mauna. What's your manao about TMT? Just a quick one.
We do not consent to the construction of TMT on Mauna Awakea, and we adamantly oppose any funding of NSF to TMT or any construction on top of Mauna Kea.
Why? What's your personal feeling?
It's just another way for them to colonize us and to be in control of our resources when our kupuna and our people are intelligent. We know how to manage our resources, and we know how to manage our if we were going to manage our funding and our kala, we put it into different places that would aid in the sustainability of our people here in these islands and not take away from that and continue to divide our community.
Right on. Mahalo. Quick words about TMT on the Mauna. What's your manao?
Quick words, just know I do not support any building of TMT or any sort of telescopes on the Mauna. I adamantly oppose all funding of NSF to build the project or any other constructions, and they should immediately put funding into the deconstruction of what they have up there already.
Right on. What is your personal feeling? Why? Why no TMT?
Why? My personal feeling is, I mean, I just think of, I was thinking of on the way here and just thinking about where we're at in Keauho and my connections with Kona and Hapaiali'i Heiau and the mo'olelo that is in our ohana, that, these are heiau that are still here after how many years, and that's a kind of pono construction. It kind of goes to show these telescopes have been on the Mauna for not even that long, not even over 100 years, and yet they're just sitting there obsolete. But yet the technology of our kupuna with the heiau building is still gonna stand for another 1,000 years. So it's like the people, it goes to show how long are they looking into the future? Not that long. They're just looking to get meet the ends of what their agenda is, and so they're not listening to the people. The people have spoken, and it's bad science. I was just looking up just the scientific processes, the hypothesis. What do the people think? The people spoke, if they're not presenting the right and correct results, which is, you know, a majority opposition to this project being built, then that's just bad science. They're not presenting the real facts, the true facts. So, yeah, mahalo.
Let's say a couple words. Uncle Cool. Quick manao about TMT. No need to be quick. We're live right now. Just wanted to get your manao about TMT.
Well, it goes way back before TMT. I believe the general lease is illegal.
Start from there.
Start from there.
Power ready.
And they have used every trick in the book in order to topple our culture. And we ain't going to topple.
Right on, Uncle.
Yes, sir.
CJ, couple words. Manao about TMT. We live. CJ Kanuha.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha. TMT, we don't need it. Our mismanagement of this mountain, Manawa has been going on for 50 years. Look at Puakaloa. Just look at this whole area and everything that has happened. I'm not one against science. I'm not one against astronomy. But what they use is they're trying to put money in front of everybody to say we're going to put these programs out there. These programs are the same thing they said when they first built these observatories. Us as children growing up here have not benefited from anything from them, nor we ever will. So, Ole TMT, please come and support the Ohana and the Lahui. And if you're not in support, we still love you. Aloha.
Aloha. Right on. Uncle Earl. Quick words, we live. You want to say a few words to the Lahui about TMT?
Aloha, man. We stand in Onipa Kako. Hawaii loa kuli ki kako kupa ame kaloka ye. No Ole TMT, Ole any funding from the NSA to the 30-meter telescope. Mahalo ke ako to all the people here today, standing live, standing Onipa for standing against the Mauna. Lahui. My sad thing is for you guys who are not on Moko Keawe, they should be coming to your Moko, your Aina, and listening to you guys give testimonies to and be able to voice your manao. Not only us on Moko Keawe. I know Andre had to fly here, a couple of brothers had to fly here from off islands to come here to testify. That's heaven to begin with. They should be flying to every single island and getting testimony from each one of you guys. So yeah, mahalo to Andre and everybody else who's here.
Manao.
Mahalo to everyone that came out to testify. We are Aole TMT, and the TMT will never be built because we have Ho'ululahui. Our keikis are coming up. They will continue to ku'e. We are already instilling in them that there will never be any more desecration to them. So mahalo.
I wanted to say one more thing. Generational trauma, yes, there is generational trauma in every one of us. Now we have generational kia'is. There's going to be generations of generations going to be standing strong. After all our skupunas are gone, they're going to be the younger opios and the younger keikis and the mopunas going to be 10 times more strong than us guys. Mahalo kea kua.
Generational kia'is. I love it. I love it. That's all our keiki. Yeah. Right on.
Mauna.
Mauna. Kukia'i mauna. Let's say a couple words to the Lahui Manao about the TMT. We live.
I'm so shy.
Just Manao.
Oh, yeah, we're from Hawaii over here, and we feel for everything what's going on. You know, we on both sides. You know, the good and the bad. We try to come together as family over here and on the Big Island, and hopefully everyone can understand what we're going through. It hurt us, and we're here to support each other. So Allah.
Right on. Mahalo. Right on.
So now I actually got to do this.
Quick manao. We're live.
Right now?
Well, whenever. Right now. Just quick manao. We're live right now.
Live here.
We are manao on TMT.
Kona. I came from Oahu just to be present, to show support for the Kia'i here in Kona, putting it down at this meeting. And to share our frustration with NSF coming out here right now. They are not helping their cause by hosting these meetings. There's a lot of work that people have put into trying to focus on the management of Mauna Kea and not make this issue just about TMT. And NSF really didn't listen to a lot of mana'o from across the spectrum telling them now is not the time to come. And really what it boils down to is our community needs an opportunity to heal. And we come straight out of the pandemic and these guys show up and it's really frustrating. So we just want to make sure that we take the opportunity to let them know that they're going to face stiff opposition and they're adding to fractures in our community, and that's only going to make their cause for TMT that much more difficult because our people are committed, and every opportunity we have to reinforce that, we will. And ultimately, as a National Science Foundation, they have a kuleana to invest in research in science, and that's not just their science. We get plenty of science to offer. So one last mana'o I hope that they take away on this very through this visit is that our ike kupuna, our culture, has much to offer to the world of science, and it is our management of land and resources, our knowledge of ocean that can help, especially at this time as we face climate change as a global crisis. So mahalo.
Mahalo, brother. All right.
Aloha.
Quick words.
Well, like Hilo, like Ka'u, it's been pro Kukia'i Mauna the whole way. So far, we've had one person in support of the building and the funding, but every other person has been adamantly against it, against the funding of the project, against the building of the telescope. And again, even the one brother who is for it, right, pointed out some important points. That one, he's in the minority, right, clearly, and so that's an important point to remember. And another thing that he said that I wanted to touch upon in my testimony that he didn't was he said that astronomy should be led by Hawaiians. And I think he's absolutely right. The problem, the situation is obviously it's not being led by Hawaiians. Right. It's being rammed down Hawaiians' throats. And so, astronomy being led by Hawaiians, this is what it looks like, right? That doesn't mean it happens. It just means that it's directed, redirected, or shut down, but at the will of the Hawaiians. And what happened in Hilo, what happened in Ka'u is happening in Kona, and I'm sure it's going to happen again in Waimea, and anywhere else they may or may not go. And if it comes down to it, I'm sure it'll happen again on the Mauna.
Well, one of the things he also said, the brother, and aloha to him, that's our people, but one of the things that he also said was that ultimately it will come down to the will of the people, the community. And I'm like, well, how long does that take?
Yeah, I mean,
because we're 10 years in.
And how many times does it take?
Yeah.
Right? Because the community has spoken, the community has stood, the community has, lied down, the community has been committed,
arrested,
sacrificed, arrested, put in jail, gone through the courts, gone through the contested case hearings. I mean, even everybody here, a lot of these people are, we're invested in our community. We're not just sitting at home waiting for the TMT to show up.
Right.
So, but every step of the way, we continue to participate in the process, albeit not by choice necessarily, but by force. This is the rules that they impose, and even when following their rules and playing by their rules, we have been clear in our position, in our opposition, and in our intent to stop the funding, even stop the project, even if they do happen to go ahead and fund it. So again, like that brother said, it's up to us. And I'll quote quick quote from James Kaulia. Yeah, o ka uhane ola o ka ninau ai loko ka poholima o ka lahui no na ka aina. Yeah, the spirit of the question is in the hands of the people to whom the land belongs, right? The people who have a connection with this space, that's us. And so no matter what they say, no matter what they do, no matter how many millions of dollars they throw at this project, ultimately, it comes down to the will of the community.
Definitely.
Right? Mahalo everybody for tuning in.
Mahalo. Gotta make sure we put the reminder. Yeah. Uncle Billy.
Yes, sir.
You want to say a few words to the Lahui? We're live right now.
Aloha.
A few mana'o.
Aloha. You know, just testify, do not consent if you feel you don't want to consent. But yes, please testify, and mahalo for you guys showing up at these meetings. Very important to all of us. And the best thing we can do is stand firm.
Right on. Mahalo. Great. You want to share some mana'o about free, prior, informed consent? A little bit how it pertains or how it relates to this kind of development?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I intend to testify tomorrow night if there's room. We'll see
Hey folks,
about
if you
this.
could please return to your seats.
The question of consent, right? United Nations Declaration. This is huge, and I don't think they have any metric or method to measure consent. How could they? And so it's already off the table. The question is, do they realize that?
Got it. Mahalo.
Okay, the next speaker will be Wayne Mahi. Wayne Mahi, followed by Claire Laprisi.
Wayne left.
Wayne left? You did? Okay, Claire Laprisi?
Aloha.
Yeah?
Can I have just a microphone?
And after Claire will be Nana Kapea.
Okay, aloha kako. Claire Koinoa. First of all, I wanted to say a little bit about myself. I'm a traditional cultural practitioner, and this is my 51st year of helping babies be born into the world. So I want to speak to the practices of traditional and compare it to the telescope. That's one thing. But before that, I do support you guys giving a lot of money to clean up the 13 telescopes that are up there and help them reclaim the land. So I think that would be a good thing that you guys would do. And I am serious about that because, you know, I've been up there with all of the times. I'll sleep in my car. I do a lot of verse right around that number, and I learn a lot. I learn a lot from Hawaiians. I'm Sicilian. We too have a mauna. We have the oldest mauna erupting volcano in the world. We broke from Africa, and we too have a lot of the same. The occupation of our islands, of our island and this island, the same general pattern. In the 40s came in. We have a lot of history because the basis of law is, and I learned this up on the Mauna. I learned a lot on the Mauna because they had a college program going on. So I'm always learning. But is the relationship of law, the first law was the Moors. They came into Sicilia because we broke from Africa with the volcano, and so they were navigators. They were, but they formed that first law was the relationship between Io, Kanaka, and Aina. And that's the relationship that the people have there, as opposed to TMT, U.S. military, and university. And so when you look at that, one's war and one's peace, and one's love. So that puts we don't look at babies, I don't look at babies as a new baby. I look at it as an elder that's coming back. And that's always been recognized, you know, so. And I've always said to families, oh, you already know each other. So we look at it as a total ceremony it's called Kanao here, but a ceremony of where we use La'alapa'au, we use our plants, we use the water, we use the land, that connection. Even the word magic means connection to land and nature, right? So when I compare a birth in the hospital, for example, I look at, every woman has the ieve, the placenta in them. That means the DNA coming from both sides of their family. And so they carry this in them, and that's what's growing the baby. That's what first grows, right? So what is that connected to? What is that DNA connected to? So, and is it connected and stays in, and it releases hormones, and it releases all kinds of magic. It releases endorphins, relaxin, oxytocin, love. So it releases so that you can have ceremony at birth, as opposed to this colonized thinking of, it's pain and suffering, and it's a medical event. Like I always say to people, humans have been here for 250,000 years. We popped a squat and had the baby. And now all of a sudden people think they have to go to the hospital and do this, and to me, they're being raped. So where is this coming from with me with the Mauna? Like in the last couple of weeks at 2 births, I helped 2 babies be born. They really do the dance, they really do the birth, it's the mothers. It's not even the mothers that birth them, it's the babies that birth. But what do we do? What do I do? I'm on the side of on the Mauna side of the Mauna. I go out and I order and I chat and I pule, because that energy comes through me, through our hands, our Mana Mana Lima, but it's coming from the Mauna. It's coming from that. The Mauna she's a Mauna. And so if we rape the Mauna from that Mauna, then we rape her, and that's what those machines are doing. They're raping her. Just like when they put in a woman and spreading her legs and putting up this new kind of ultrasound. That ultrasound is used for war. It bombs our Kanaloa. So when you look at the relationship, if you allow yourself, so now you guys are educated, right? You're getting educated. And I do thank you, because I know this is very intense to come into. So I thank you for just sitting there and trying to say the names properly, because really Kapuluha is very important to stay for us too. So, but now that you know, if you do the wrong thing, it's going to fall on your children and your grandchildren. And so that's what happens when you rape this Mauna, from what's happening to their children and their grandchildren. And I help this community. And I'll always help this community. I was called to come over here for this. Now, I didn't know I was going to fight the U.S. military, and I didn't know it was going to be all the geothermal, and I didn't know the pesticides. I have more things over here, all in these islands, because of what they are. Because we all know that telescope is not just about astronomy. You may have a love for astronomy. It's about war. Literally, it's about military. Now, that Mauna already is being bombed, fired. She's being bombed. We have to listen to these bombs going on all the time, every 2 years when RIMPAC comes. And they don't even need to do it, because it's all sonar and it's all ultrasound. It's all sonar and it's all drones. It's all computers. The U.S. spends more money than any other nation on war. And then the next 10 countries, they spend more than those next 10 countries. Heaven. So that's all you'd be supporting, is war. Desecration. Every native peoples. And there's a theory of how it's always been done. You take away their land, you take away their religion, you take away their language, you take away their children, whether you put them in institutions or put them in schools, and you give them the food, and you take away their food. So right now, you're talking to me, and I'm learning more. I appreciate everybody that comes here, but I'm learning more about the water. Now they're telling us as farmers, I also farm, how I learned birth. I learned birth not from any book. It was given to me. I come from a long generations of it. But also my connection with the earth, my connection with their Mauna, my connection with my own Mauna, that's what teaches me, because we taught in our dreams. So you don't have to love astrology. Do your practices. Walk up that Mauna, or not walk up. Walk up to wherever you look and start with your feet, just your bare feet. You have acupressure point right down there. That's a life resuscitation point. And the Chinese place name of that is fear. So let's get rid of your fear that maybe you don't know, maybe you're not secure enough to really trust in whoever's your akua, your spirits, whoever guides you. But for us, it's real. We don't need to go and do that. These guys already know it. All we have to do is pay respect to that Mauna. And so for me, to be up there in all those battles at the V, and you don't really want to be on the wrong side of this one because you're not going to win. We will never quit. And I think we've gotten that. But we can't. The world's gone through too much. And to see another Native people desecrated is really painful for me. I've worked with, I'm in South America, I'm in Africa, I'm all over doing birth work to try to stay traditional practitioners. We need these forces. Because see, that affects all these Maunas around the world, they are the Brahmas. That's what keeps us going. They hold the water. So they're telling us, don't do gardens. You can't use too much water. But what are they doing? What are they doing? If you knew all the stuff of the water that's being taken out of our ocean, now they want to drill down below the rocks and take that very hapu water, that's there it sustains the whole ocean. That we believe that our ancestors come 450 million years as sharks, then into whales, 50 million years, humans. So you don't have to believe what we believe. I believe that. Because that's true in my culture. So, but just have to have respect. And I think that, I know a lot of people got, upset, and I get that. I feel it. But we just want you guys to know, go home and go do something. Take those other 13 things off there. Help clean it up. Help be part of the solution. And stop the train of cars that go up and down that mountain. Because as far as I know, you weren't supposed to go up that mountain. I think if I'm not going to speak for Hawaiian people here, but from what I've heard is you didn't just go up there. And it's painful, in 215 when we were there, just to see this light of cars and everybody just going up there. And it's like, it'd be like someone coming into your bedroom and all of a sudden screwing your partner. It's like even worse than that. Maybe 15 women coming in there. It's terrible. So you can't cross that line. And so I really hope that you go back, and of course, I'm not for you spending any money except to clean it up. And I want to thank you all for your time and for all of your voices and for all the love, because we do know we're going to win this one. Amen. Kukiai Mauna.
Thank you. And I'd already mentioned Mauna Kapele is next, and then followed by Alohalani Hope.
Aloha. It's Mana Kapele. Completely is Kamana Kapele. Mana for short. I want to hand you 3 documents that I'm going to speak on briefly. And before I speak on those documents, I'd like to read to you the words of my kupuna. So I consider myself a modern day voice of those who went before me. And so this is the work of Queen Liliuokalani. And I thank the speakers that went before me that spoke about the lands of Mauna Kea being the crown lands. Okay, so I'm gonna share with you the mana'o of the last reigning monarch of these Hawaiian Islands. And this was in regards to how the Hawaiian people were being treated. And this was an appeal to the American people and their government as to how they view the Hawaiian people and what should be done justly. So in our chapter on Hawaiian autonomy, in the back of her book, she says, "But for the Hawaiian people, for the 40,000 of my own race and blood, descendants of those who welcomed the devoted and pious missionaries of 70 years ago, for them, has this mission of mine accomplished anything? O honest Americans, as Christians, hear me for my downtrodden people. Their form of government is as dear to them as yours is precious to you. Quite as warmly as you love your country, so they love theirs. With all your goodly possessions, covering a territory so immense that there yet remains parts unexplored, possessing islands that, although near at hand, had to be neutral ground, in time of war. Do not covet the little vineyard of Naboth, so far from your shores, lest the punishment of Ahab fall upon you, if not in your day, in that of your children. For be not deceived, God is not mocked. The people to whom your fathers told of the living God and taught to call Father, and whom the sons now seek to despoil and destroy, are crying aloud to him in their time of trouble. And he will keep his promise. And he will listen to the voice of his Hawaiian children, lamenting for their homes. It is for them that I would give the last drop of my blood. It is for them that I would spend, nay, am spending, everything belonging to me. Will it be in vain? It is for the American people and their representatives in Congress to answer these questions. As they deal with me and my people kindly, generously, and justly, so may the great ruler of all nations deal with the grand and glorious nation of the United States of America." Those are the words of wisdom of nearly 130 years ago. These are the words that, unfortunately, some of our own people have forgotten. And when we looking for a solution to this war that we're engaged in, which began on January 17, 1893, we need to remember her words, because after 130 years, nearly 30 years of indoctrination and inculcation, generations have forgotten what the truth is. What is the truth here? What are we dealing with? And so, the first document, if you look at it there, is a public notice. And this public notice is a proclamation of a treaty. And it was a treaty of truce, which was established pursuant to the law of nations, law of war, because the Hawaiian Kingdom had entered into a state of war on January 17, 1893. And that condition of war still prevails. So it's important for us to know what process of law will actually bring resolution to the problem. The civil laws of the state of Hawaii, civil laws of the United States of America will not bring the solution to the problem. It is the law of war. From an international perspective, that is the solution. Okay? So now this treaty of truce, I'll cite it. She said, I, Lilo Kalani, by the grace of God, and under the Constitution of the Hawaiian Kingdom, Queen, do hereby solemnly protest against any and all acts done against myself and the constitutional government of the Hawaiian Kingdom by certain persons claiming to have established a provisional government of and for this kingdom, that I yield to the superior force of the United States of America, whose Minister Plenipotentiary, His Excellency John L. Stevens, has caused United States troops to be landed at Honolulu and declared that he would support the said provisional government. Now, to avoid any collision of armed forces and perhaps the loss of life, I do, under this protest and impelled by said force, yield my authority until such time as the government of the United States shall, upon the facts being presented to it, undo the action of its representative and reinstate me in the authority which I claim as the constitutional sovereign of the Hawaiian Islands. Done at Honolulu on the 17th of January, 1893. So this protest, this treaty, is supreme law of the land. Not only in the Hawaiian Kingdom, but according to the U.S. Constitution, any treaty, like the Constitution of the United States, is supreme law of the land. So the question is, have we been in violation of said treaty? To be in violation of said treaty is to be in violation of the Constitution itself. And that is the question at hand. Does NSF, as an agency of the federal government, have the right to spend their funds, their money, in paying for this atrocity, which should never have been built from day one? This condition of war still prevails. The law of war is still in force. Will the NSF choose to continue to violate such a law and deal with the repercussions, the consequences of such violation? This is really the cause of the problems that we've been experiencing for the last 100, nearly 30 years. Everything that we've been dealing with are symptoms. We've been dealing with symptoms, and as long as we deal with symptoms, we cannot find the cure because we're not dealing with the cause. Here's the cause. And as soon as we deal with the cause and we find our obligation as American or Hawaiian, we will find the solution. You deal with the cause, the disease disappears. Deal with the symptoms, they'll forever be symptoms. We're trying to bring all of us to a place where we can deal with the cause. You know, in the treaty between the United States of America and the Hawaiian Kingdom in 1850, in its first article it stated, "There shall be perpetual peace between His Majesty the King of the Hawaiian Islands and the United States of America." Perpetual peace. By treaty. That treaty was violated because we entered into a state of war, violating the condition of peace that was guaranteed. And here we are, 130 years later, and that violation continues to take place. And so we reflect back again 130 years ago on this treaty, which is an agreement under the law of war. Will we continue to violate that once again? Or will we decide to say, you know what, we should look at this more carefully. If we've been mistaken or had no idea that this treaty actually existed, we should consider it. Because your obligation as members of a federal agency, right, is to abide by law. It's a rule of law that prevails. It is a rule of law. Law rules, nothing else. To violate a law consciously is to be left without right. You must first meet your obligation. Your obligation is to the Constitution of the United States. Our obligation as subjects of the Hawaiian Kingdom, descendants of Hawaiian people, is to our Constitution. That is our obligation. That is our responsibility. And so we invite you, right, to work with us hand in hand. It is our obligation of both our countries. This is the Hawaiian Kingdom. This is not the state of Hawaii. This is the Hawaiian Kingdom. And this kingdom has always represented peace. And this is the ultimate effort that we would participate in. Let us return to that state of peace that was guaranteed by treaty in 1850. You know, it's possible. It's more than possible. It's probable. We will succeed. If you have not heard this message before, hear it now. Take it back to your government. Take it to your representatives. Have them look at it more carefully. Because we have every reason, to make a stand. And if those crown land, that Mauna Kea is crown land, we will stand there again. And not just there, throughout the entire Hawaiian chain. It's all Hawaiian. It's all kingdom lands. It is a monarchy. Nothing else. You know, your Constitution, when I read it, I love it. It says, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. And from my mana'o, from my kupunan ancestors, it goes this way. Freedom of speech does not mean free speech. Freedom of speech, freedom is the product of speech. Determining that your speech must be based on truth. And that truth promotes freedom. What you print in written documentation must be founded in truth. It cannot be a fallacy. Because if you promote a lie, the person receiving the lie becomes bound by the lie. There is no freedom of the press. Freedom of speech must be based on truth. Freedom of the press, what is printed must be true. That is true freedom. And that is what we hold dear to. We support the elements of your Constitution that was designed to promote freedom, not to promote warfare. Unfortunately, here we are, nearly 130 years engaged in war. For most of us, being educated, growing up, we had no idea. It's Hawaii. It's an aloha state. It's beautiful. We have no idea that we're still engaged in the war. And what the war does is it makes every individual, whether American or Hawaiian, an instrument of war. So what would people do if they understood that they're actually participating in a war? We struggle today. Many of our people, we cannot find homes, right? We're doubling up in houses. And other people come with $1 million in their pocket, they're buying up all the houses, right? Those are acts of hostility, which this treaty right here, since 1893, bars all claims against Hawaii. And that's what it is. She says, to avoid any collision of armed forces, meaning we're already in a state of war. And perhaps the loss of life. We're preventing the bloodshed. We're preventing the loss of life. I do under this protest and impelled by said forces yield my authority until such time as the government of the United States shall, until the acts of this representative. And what was installed there, right, by her authority as a sovereign state of the Hawaiian Kingdom, under a condition of war, applying her authority, right, to put in place a suspension of hostilities. A suspension of hostilities that could only take place under a condition of war. And under the suspension of hostilities, no foreign claim can take place here in Hawaii. So from day one, the United States of America was barred from any claims And here we are nearly 130 years later. You're still barred. So what that proves is that every act since January 17, 1893 have been acts of hostility in violation of the law of war. Yeah, and that is what we're dealing with. So we're here to invite you to do what is just, do what is right. It's easy for us to get into conflict. We've done it for so long, but we don't have to. Our Kupuna, the last reigning sovereign of these Hawaiian Islands, knew very well where we were headed. When the invasion took place, she knew where we were going. And in 3 small paragraphs, laid down the solution for all of us, for Hawaiian and for American. And the result of this, what followed this protest, the second documentation is President Cleveland's message. And President Cleveland, in his message, covers the entire thing. You know, in determining that it was an emergency, a national emergency, that the United States of America had entered into, meaning they were in a state of war with the Hawaiian Kingdom. And that state of war still exists. What follows decades later is Public Law 103-150. Yes, it is a domestic document. It is not an international application of law, it's domestic law. But what it does in the 9th whereas, it cites this treaty verbatim, except for one word. I think they switched it. Yeah. Making the entire United States population accountable to what has taken place. And this is why we're here. We're here, like she says, until such time, upon the facts being presented, and that's all we mean. We're here to present the facts. And so in doing so, we were asking you the question, will you fund the TMT? Is there a reason for you to? Are you going to make the choice to violate the Constitution, your Constitution? Again, we ask you to say no. Take this information to your government and say, you know, we have reason to sit down and talk about this some more. Because what we really want is we want to return to that condition of peace which was guaranteed back in 1850. And we can only accomplish that if we do it in the most peaceful, lawful manner possible. Let me say one last thing. Of all the beautiful things that we can talk about in the Hawaiian culture, the pinnacle of Hawaiian culture was law. How they understood law and how they applied law. That is the pinnacle of Hawaiian culture. And when you understand it for what it is, you see the beauty and you understand what aloha is all about. That is true aloha. Not the aloha that we've learned to, you know, in this 50th state. That's a misrepresentation of what aloha truly is. Aloha is law. Right? Now, our Constitution is called Kumpukanawai. Right? It's about the water. It's a supreme law. The water of life. Let's see. I think I've covered all 3 documents. You know, and I thank you for this opportunity for allowing me to share. And I hope that the words of our Queen will resonate within you and resonate with all of us here tonight. So that we can all we can all, electricity. We can all collectively play our part at finding the solution. Thank you so much.
We have 29 more people that have signed up, and that's why I've been trying to keep folks to the time limit, and we hate cutting people off, but we're going to lose our court reporter after the next speaker. Is it possible, I'm turning to the sound person, is it possible to continue to record people? Are you able to stay a little later so people can at least speak and she can translate later? That's what we're going to do, and we do have time limitations for this room, so we'll try to get through as many as we possibly can. I implore you, though, please, to make sure that you really pay attention as best as possible for the sake of everybody else who has signed up to speak, so we can accommodate everybody. Please limit it to 2 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
I'll be glad to be the court reporter because I can type pretty fast.
So thank you very much for that offer, but I think we'll be fine with this situation because we can tape record, we can record it, and then she can translate later, but thank you again, that's very sweet of you. The next speaker is Aloha Lani Hope.
Aloha kako. I'm going to speak fast because I got some facts that are going to blow your mind about Mauna Okea. Aloha, John Kalu'u, the elected noble of the Ka'u district. This is his words to you folks.
These people are the beneficiaries. They're supposed to be the trustees taking care of this land, and they're not doing a very good job of it. Number two, there are 28 factions of groups that want to get our kingdom back. And everything the man that just gave to you and spoke to you is all true. So help me, Keakua. The kingdom exists. I'm running for OHA. I'm a kingdom national, a Hawaiian national first with Uncle Robert Keali'omau's government. We did a study in Kamehameha School, King Cam. There are 28 different people wanting to have our country back. Isn't that a lot? But PTA, Pohakaloa training, and the DU, the depleted uranium that gets, every time they do an arsenal and they hit our Aina, all that goes up into the air. And I went to jail for that Mauna. And I'd do it tomorrow again too, for what they've done. They're playing war games on our Aina. Enough already. The effect of this Mauna, this sacred place, the U.S. Air Force could care less, the Army could care less, and inside that drawing you have there is a U.S. Air Force installation of a laser beam that can take anything out in the sky. Did you know that? We saw it in the architectural drawings that Uncle Robert had. 30 seconds. There's new technology that will be better than the Mauna Kea 40-meter telescope that you want to do. Wow. Ige is supposed to take down the decommissioned telescopes. Has he done it yet? No. Imua.
Thank you. Our court reporter will stick with one more. Eli Edney, thank you. Hello.
Hi, Kyla. Hi. Hi, I'm Eli Edney. I came because I find science communication fascinating. And I'm sorry we missed your presentation, Dave. You might have convinced me astronomy is among the better sciences, but botany is actually better. I'm sorry. I can do a presentation and prove it too. So I'm sorry about a few things. So I looked up some figures about the NSF STEM funding, right? It looks to be substantial. And there are many other funding opportunities that NSF has presented in Hawaii, if I wasn't mistaken. I would have been interested to hear more about those, and I'll look those up on my own time as well. But I have a worry that those STEM funding objectives, firstly, don't achieve the greatest benefit in Hawaii because of the brain drain situation, where each year about 3,000 of the brightest young people leave the state, for better opportunities, better jobs, better education. And it's a hard situation that we find ourselves in, because it sounds a lot like science is unwelcome. And in a larger scope in society, there are certainly clear and present dangers to societies that reject science. And to me, it seems like another situation in a long list of religions trying to make us blind to the truth about nature, when science has again and again demonstrated these truths about nature. And I just find the data and the facts a lot more compelling personally. But it is a community where I have to live and work, and it's kind of a challenging, but interesting at the same time, to be able to have disagreements, to be able to present different sides of things and stuff like that. But just to wrap up, hopefully quickly, I think Hawaii probably would have been a fine place for astronomy, say 2,000 years ago. The mountain was probably the same. 150 years ago, the mountain was probably the same. And 150 years from now, the mountain will probably be the same. What we do today, and in the foreseeable future, especially looking at STEM interest in society, might make or break whether we have a society here in Hawaii that is going to welcome and embrace science 150 years from now, because it might not be anytime really soon. So, thanks.
Thank you. And we'll just keep on recording. John Cloppins? John Cloppins? Sally Rankin? Sally Rankin? Kaia Lyons Iglesias? I'm sorry?
It's
Kaia.
Yeah, that's
Kaia.
fine. Don't worry about it.
I'd like to learn, thank you.
That's such a great statement. You'd like to learn. Thank you. I'm going to start my presentation by letting the teachers know that my son is going to be late for school tomorrow, because he needs to be here to listen to his mommy speak to each and every one of you. He's 7 years old, and he was on the Mauna when he was just 3, and he hid in my armada when the poo sounded, and my students protected him while I stood on the side and I chanted and prayed for the kupuna when they were arrested. I actually am changing the narrative this evening, and I want to be respectful of time. When I read NSF, and this is the company that you all work for, the mission for NSF is to promote the progress of science to advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, to secure the national defense, and for other purposes. NSF promotes the progress of science by investing to expand knowledge in science engineering. NSF also invests in actions that increase the capacity of the U.S. to conduct and exploit such research. It doesn't say in a humane way. It doesn't say if the people of the space is okay. It doesn't say any of that. NSF advances the national health, prosperity, and welfare. NSF's contributions to securing the national defense. My heart is pounding. What does that mean? It includes research, cryptography, cyber security. The U.S. National Science Foundation advances all of the things that you guys are sitting here talking about. And to know that you came to a space, yet you promote all this stuff, and you couldn't figure out what our people was about and what our land is saying. So basically, NSF is coming to my land, and you have not taken into consideration that your funding could possibly impact the livelihood of my boy. My 7-year-old will not have running water that will be secure for him to drink. And his mo'opuna's mo'opuna. That's what you're saying. And you're okay with it. And that makes me sad, because you just told me, my friend, that you want to learn. And as an educator that committed my life, 25 plus years in our Hawaiian language immersion program, I'm an instructor at the Hawaii Lifestyles Hawaii Community College, Palamanui, and I promote education. I promote you. I promote you. And today, my heart is broken that as a STEM Hawaii Lifestyles instructor, I have to pull away from grants that promote NSF and what you're doing to my community. And it saddens me, because I love my community. And I read your mission, and it is not in alignment with my community and what I do to support and uplift my child and everyone else in this room. On this paper, mahalo. You know, on yours first page, it says, there's this really cute quote, "There is nothing which can better deserve your patronage from the promotion of science and literature. Knowledge is in every country the surest basis of public happiness." This is quoted from George Washington. Yeah, George Washington. And it blows my mind, because I'm thinking, do you guys really know what George Washington really did? A little bit scary. And then I want to tell you, in ending, this is Sage, and Sage wanted to talk tonight. And he told me, he goes, "Mommy, I put my name on the paper because I have to talk, I have to tell them. I have to tell them what I feel." So our Kikamehameha Ekahi says, "Inwa e nā puki'i, a inui ka vai ava, a ohe hope e hoi mai ai." See, my Buddha said, not George Washington, your dude, my dude, said, drink the bitter waters. Drink it. The battle is on. You cannot give up. This is my son, Kanivi Ko'o Lyons Iglesias. And on his behalf, my name is on that paper. Because one day he's going to look up and he's going to say, my mommy stood there and this is what she believed in, so he knows where to stand. So when you ever come back, I hope you're giving me billions of dollars to go help the kids who is 2 years behind in school so that they can learn how to read and write and do their math. That's where we need money. Our kids are suffering. They don't have food. They don't eat food. There's no food when there's no school. Help us feed my kids. Our Title III schools, Title I schools, we don't have enough food. We don't have transportation for our children. Give me your money. I can tell you how. I know how to do that. I can help you. This is who I work for. hope when you go to sleep tonight, that you remember their faces. Because when your mo'opuna and your grandchildren look up your name, what are they going to say? On behalf of my kupuna, my ancestors, I thank you for listening and hearing me tonight. I thank you for recording my voice. So my kupuna know I took my place tonight. And my mo'opuna know where their place is in the near future. Mahalo.
Mahina Paishan Duarte.
Ai, e na kupuna na poe aloha aina na kamali'i, aloha ia a kakua pau. Aloha no. E wiki ana ke ia olelo ia o kou, o iai, ua hiki no ke olelo kiko I na mana o koi. O ka mua, a ole wau ai like I ke kukulu ana ia TMT, a ole loa. O e ka mua. A lua, a ole wau ka ko'o I ka ho'olilo kala I ke kukulu ana ia TMT, a ole loa. A kolu. Koho wau I ka option a ole kukulu. No build, no action alternative. Eia ke kahilu. A ole wau ike ke kahi kanaka e unuhi ana I ke ia makola Hawaii. And o iai o Hawaii ke ia, he mea nui ka hiki ke ho'olaha aku e wehe makana au, makana ono o hoi, maka leo o wiwi o neia aina. Maka leo. O lelo Hawaii. No laila e olu o kou e ho'omakaukau I nā halawai me ke kahi kanaka unuhi o lelo Hawaii. E olu mai. And then, as a closing thought, like many of the mothers here, the aunties, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, the daddies, the uncles, community ho'i, because it takes community to raise children. My daughter started kindergarten. My youngest started kindergarten this last week. And I'm teaching her, I'm preparing her. No means no. I'm teaching her your body is sacred. So here are the things to say, here are your boundaries we practice. How to say no. I'm teaching her how to understand safety of her own body. So why is it that when, for 50 years, Kanaka Uiwi and our allies that stand with us have said no consistently over 50 years? No, no, no. What does it mean when we continue to be forced to participate in these processes when we clearly have said no? What does that mean to my own humanity? What does that mean to the humanity of the kupuna that I love and desire to serve? If that is the symbol of a nation called America, for which we cannot even, the people that is of these lands will not be honored when we say no. It's shame, it's hila, and it is unjust, period. No means no. Aloha.
Okay, sorry about that. Barbara Dalton? Barbara Dalton? Hinani Bell? We do. Okay, we only have the room till 10, I've been told. Hinani Bell is no longer here. Deborah Ward? And folks, just as a reminder, if we do run out of time, we are still obviously accepting comments in writing through September 17th. Oral comments, written comments are all treated exactly the same. There's no greater weight if they appear here in oral comments. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Deborah Ward. There is an elephant in this room. You might be wondering why people are upset tonight and why they were upset the last 2 nights that you met. We called for a contested case in 2003 and we prevailed and NASA left. We held a contested case in 2011 and we prevailed in the Supreme Court and the permit was nullified. We were remanded back to participate in yet another contested case in 2016. We gave up our lives and our livelihoods for 11 months. And after thousands of pages of testimony and documents, we poured out our hearts and our knowledge. The university called us backward-looking Hawaiians. And while claiming to need the telescope to look backward billions of years, the university and the TMT got the transcripts from that contested case. The 23 petitioners got no transcripts. We were not even allowed to copy the copy of the transcripts that was in the library. In the end, the judge in the case took the university's words verbatim without using a single word of our 11 months of work. The permit was granted. So we had no choice but to show up on the Mauna for months. Please understand that we are spiritual, passionate, committed people. We live in Kapualoha and we are peaceful. We are not terrorists. We're not violent. We don't bring guns. We don't do drugs. We're not rapists. We showed up afraid for ourselves because when we saw the armed forces, the massive sound cannons, the firearms, the willingness to drag elderly people in wheelchairs out of their wheelchairs, handcuffed, and then they were required to return to court 12 times before they were dismissed. Those cases were dismissed. Last night I drove home, but I couldn't sleep. Why? Because I heard the testimony of Jurdun Kanda, a retired police lieutenant, who described the plans in place to escalate the force against these people, passionate people. We're not rioters, drug takers, or criminals. We are grandmothers, farmers, engineers. We are scientists. We are teachers. We are people in the community who belong here. And we're compelled to protect what we value beyond measure. We're traumatized by the threats, the sadness, the community divisions, and the heartache. Now we know that next time, if you decide to proceed, that we will be forcefully dispersed with tear gas, rubber bullets, and cannons. You must address the fear. Sorry, it's just disappeared. You must address the fear, the trauma, the loss of livelihood, and the sacrifices when you write this EIS. And the impact of the law enforcement and the people who left law enforcement, and on the fabric of our community if you make a wrongful decision. This is something that has to be addressed in the EIS, and I don't think I've ever seen it before. How many people have been killed or injured or died of stress and heartbreak because of the telescopes you've built and funded? I don't know. But violence and bloodshed will be your legacy in Hawaii. You won't be here to see it, but we will. And we say not now and not ever. Thank you.
Malama Chamberlain? Malama Malama Chamberlain? Manuela Chamberlain? Manuela Chamberlain? Okay. Shelley O.M. Hai? Shelley O.M. Hai? Hai? Yes.
Aloha, my name is Shelley Maka'ala Nakoa III Mahi Hanai of the Ha'i Bloodline Navigators. And I'm very concerned about Mauna Kea and the importance to Oceania and the Hawaiians in general. And as an American citizen, I just beg you to please consider what the Hawaiians are saying, because we are belligerently occupying their country. And the lease was written to demise their land. So there is an opportunity here that we could come together, at least in discussion. I am not in favor of building the TMT on top of Mauna Kea. It's too fragile. And just the testimony from the cement batching, I was... So I wanted to just let you know there's a letter that came up from the United Nations Human Rights, and they're recognizing that there's a strange form of occupation by the United States resulting from an illegal military occupation and a fraudulent annexation. And that concerning Hawaiian lands, particularly of those heirs and descendants with land titles originating from the distribution of lands, we're talking about the Mahele, and also crown lands, and pretty much every square inch of Hawaii Nei is under the Mahele. And during the course of the history here, it came about that there is the term Hawaiian archipelago. Archipelago with capital letter means a legal nation state capable of making its own treaties. In a letter here from the County of Hawaii, it says on July 7th, 1898, Hawaii was annexed by the U.S. and the lands of the Republic were also ceded to the United States. Although ceded to the United States, the lands never became the property of the United States, which recognizes special trust for these Hawaiian lands. We are failing in the trust. The irony of this whole situation is that in Ka'u, I'll finish with this, is in Ka'u, they were going to build a spaceport in Ka'u. And actually, it would have been built on top of ancient star maps. And we don't want to make that mistake again, where we are going to go in and try to do progress while we're destroying the very key. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands also that we're being asked to comment on the whole Northern Hemisphere. So what about the indigenous people of the Canary Islands? Because my father always taught me that there was this whistle language, Silbo language, and where's the voice of those people? And I just wanted to say, the energy audit. I had a question, where are you getting all this energy for this TMT? And I'm just gonna have to say, I have not got the documents in my hands, but there appears to be that one of the energy sources is a 600-gallon tank of nuclear waste in the form of what appears to be what's called a snap generator. And if you look in Sparks Matsunaga's testimony in Congress, that the military in Hawaii knows where these snap generators are. It's a barrel of nuclear waste beneath the TMT to set up an electric substation. I heard about the cement batching, but in the full TMT plan, it was never told to the Hawaiian people that you're maybe, well, not you, but they're considering putting a snap generator as part of the energy there. And the Puna geothermal is not viable. I don't know exactly where you're going to get the energy from, but that needs to be considered, and the impact that you're taking energy, you're taking life, You're taking money away that could go to help the Hawaiian people because they're suffering. Well, please consider the treaty. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm told we can go straight till 10 because we have the room, but we're going to have to wrap up our things. Tessa Kanakaoli.
Aloha. My name is Tessa Lynn Kanani Okaleolani Kanakuale. I am a resident here my whole life. I was raised in Ka'u. That's where I come from. I was at that meeting last night, and unfortunately, I could not wait long enough to speak because there was a lot going on. So here I am tonight, super tired. Mahalo everyone for being out here listening. Pretty much everything that's supposed to be said has been said, so I won't be redundant and repeating all of that. But there's a lot of kuleana, and I don't agree with any of this. I was raised alongside my mom, who some say total activist. I was part of that whole movement back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s with the passport, the spaceport, and trying to build a prison in Ka'u and all that stuff. Now here we are. You guys want to build this monstrosity on top of this Mauna, and yeah, trying to use the excuse as in the name of science. But you know what? We already have telescopes up there. We have 13. There's no sense to build something brand new, break new ground for something that's already existing. Take apart the stuff that's broken, use that area. What's so hard about that? My mom couldn't be here tonight, but she wanted me to share a little tidbit. And I won't take up too much of your time. But basically, Hawaii County has a building code set in stone regarding development of structures, prohibiting or preventing high-rise luxury resorts and apartments. Condominiums not higher than existing buildings, aforementioned, to prevent what happened in Oahu and Maui from happening on Mokuokeawe. So, does building a 30-meter telescope, if granted, far exceed that building code set in stone of our iwi kupuna? Would it not set a precedent for construction or development of the entire island from the top of the Mauna to Makai, from one end to the other, north, south, east, and west, especially our coastal shoreline? That is the question, Basically, I'm here representing myself, my children, my ohana, some not even here in this physical realm. All my aunties and uncles and everybody who has passed away, unfortunately, fighting this fight for years. Uncle Bernard Kili'ikoa, Grandma Margaret Dunsell, Uncle Archie Ka'awa, the list goes on and on. When are you guys gonna stop? We don't want it. We oppose it. Funding something that the people don't want should be, that's it, period. Why you guys keep asking? I feel like you guys trying to put these little meetings, yeah? You guys want to hear the community opinions and all that stuff, while secretly, you guys on the back row trying to go to your back door. Oh, everybody blocking the front, let's go to your back. Come on. Rada, I don't know if he's still here. Thank you for, sharing his mana'o in supporting of science. But really, it's for the people and for our keiki and our mo'opuna to come. I'm a kokune na miki. My kids are getting older. What are we going to have for our children and generations to come if we see this big monstrosity on top of the hill, sitting on our natural reserve of water? That feeds the land, that sustains us. It's ridiculous. So again, thank you for your time, but we say no, period. The end. Out. Now. Good night.
Alakai Kapanini?
Kapanui.
Kapanui?
Hi.
Wait, sorry. It's the way it was written, sorry. O hanno kmona ke o puwa e kmona ke o wa ke kane papa balinu tawahine hanno ho kuhewaine hanno ha yari hanno tamona he ke kimona na ke. I chanted this last night. I'm going to chant it again tomorrow at Waimea. That's our genealogy chant. It's the introduction of the birth of Mauna Kea and how it ties us directly to that Piko. Again, everybody said all the things that needed to be said tonight. We talked about jurisdiction. We didn't talk about leaks actually, but as far as I understand, there's an effort to extend the lease, which is absolutely ridiculous, and I would love to know who's on the board of BLNR that's approving that. We've talked about cultural significance, we've talked about water, we've talked about the past EIS a little bit and how it was signed off by Catherine Kealoha, and we all know where she ended up. We've talked about the history of lies, the illegal construction, the Keck telescope that my uncle helped to construct in the 70s, and how they lied about the permits, and how there is a history of that happening on Mauna Kea. And I'm gonna say exactly what I said last night, that science at the cost of consent is nothing but white supremacy and cultural genocide. And you will be perpetuating that if you choose to fund this project and you would not listen to us. And I sincerely hope that you choose to listen to us, because I would love to not have to give up everything again and go live there for another year or more, because that's what I did last time and I will do it again. Okay? Aloha. Thank you, Donna Goodale. Jade Leonala Slidon? Yeah? She's here, okay. Thank you. And folks, it's 9:54. We might be able to fit in one, maybe two after her, I'm not sure. But there are going to be people left without having said anything, sorry.
My name is Jennifer Lena Alas Lightholm. I wasn't even sure if I was going to come here tonight, and before I went to bed last night, just memories and words and thoughts just came flooding in my head, and I had to take my notebook out and write it down, so I guess that was a sign that I needed to be here. So I'm standing here as a mother, a Kanaka mother, a grandmother, and in 2015, I was up on the Mauna with my then 8-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old son and my mother. And that was one of the first stands, the 24/7 vigils that was on the Mauna. And I say it till today that was a time where I think my kids were their happiest. They were engaged, they were connected, they were seen, and they were the most authentic I think I've ever seen them before. They held signs, they held space in the crosswalk, they slept with me in the car. And it's kind of contradictory to think that, or even to say that they felt safe, not in the way that you think, because there were police officers present, the striker brigade was out there, DLNR officers, but I say safe because they were among Kanaka who loved them, and their feet were on Aina. And then on September 18th of last year, my daughter committed suicide. And that was the 8-year-old little happy girl that was on the Mauna just a few years before that. And I bring that up because the state of the world that our children are growing up in, we need to do everything that we can to protect these spaces that we have left for them. so that they can return there and reconnect. They're so disengaged, they're so overstimulated. And it's so important that we speak up now. Now is not a time where I just sit idly by, like, I don't want to come here, you know, and we've got a lot of things going on. We've been through the contested case hearings, I've been arrested on the Mauna, and it's just kind of traumatic for me, not only losing my daughter, but coming here over and over and over again, saying the same thing. But I have to be her voice now because she's not here. And to make sure that when she stood there, it mattered. And she mattered. And I had to write it down because I know it's going to get emotional, so I'm going to try to hurry. And I thought to myself on the way here, there are so many times over the past few months I thought, I should have had a year at least some more, and I had to move. And we have so many things going on, and then I thought, this is one more thing. As Indigenous people, I feel like we're not even afforded the luxury to just do things that other people can do because we have to show up for these things. And it's not like we haven't shown up hundreds of times before, like Uncle Ku, Auntie Pua, Uncle Kalani, just over and over for decades, saying the same thing, and here we are again. And my desire and my wish for my children and my grandchildren and the next generations to come is that it stops with me. I never want them to have to put their bodies in front of machines or put their bodies between our kupuna and police officers. It's like the trauma is just continuing over and over, generation after generation, and when is it gonna stop? And everybody here has said pretty much everything I have to say, but for me, the Mauna is not just a mountain with the perfect elevation and conditions for you to look into space. It's my ohana. And for ohana, we will do whatever it takes, and we'll keep coming back again and again if we have to. And so it's just aore, no TMT period. And that's why I came.
Keone Payton. Keone Payton. Trick Medeiros. Trick Medeiros. Leomana Geraldo. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I think this is going to have to be the last person that we take comments from tonight. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for staying late. Thank you guys again for giving us the opportunity to voice ourselves. Hopefully, our voices be heard. Just wanted to remind you folks again, it's important that everybody here tonight be heard. I don't understand how the last 50 years can be looked at. Really don't understand that. Is it your guys' fault that this process starts from now again? Giving us more flashbacks. Mental health is a factor. But you know, like Uncle Hank used to say, jurisdiction is everything. I mentioned to you folks last night, if you knew that this project was illegal, would you fund it? You said no. Then why are we here? You don't want to go back to 1893, then let's go back to 1993. The Bill of Apology. That's something I really don't have to accept. your President Clinton, he signed it. I see that as him admitting that, yeah. You did illegally seize government lands, that's what Mauna Kea is. It's important that we be heard. All we ask is for receipts to show that you guys do have legal and lawful authority to assert your laws here in the Hawaiian Kingdom. Simple. Bring the receipts. We don't need a telescope that goes 10 stories into the Mauna. We don't need that. We got 11 up there that's not being used. Choose one. It's already there. If that's what you guys really want to do is look at stars. We already know about the stars. Our ancestors did that. Don't recreate the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's already there. It's rolling. We don't need that. We're not worried about what's thousands of years ahead are. We're only here for a moment. That's it. Our land is our land. That should be enough for you folks. This is ours. We're not going to your home and take you guys, do something that you guys don't want us to do. We wouldn't do that. We accepted you guys. Maybe we shouldn't have, you know? But that's just not us. But to take advantage of being welcomed and then over-welcoming your stay would start to create more than opposition. It's called hatred. We don't need that. We want to remain Pono.
Ew.
Yeah. To have your language be illegal. Hawaiian language illegal in Hawaii. Don't make sense. That's why I cannot speak Hawaiian. My parents couldn't speak Hawaiian because their parents couldn't speak Hawaiian to them. The struggle is real. Do I wish I knew how to speak Hawaiian? Did pretty good, But with that being said, please take into consideration that we wouldn't want the National Science Foundation to be part of the state of Hawaii's fraud and corruption. They're here illegally. It's called illegal occupation. Don't even get involved with that. As it is, this administration, if they're not already in jail, they're standing in line to go to jail. You know, but thank you folks for your guys' time. Sorry for taking up your guys' time, guys. But I'll be home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It looks like we may have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people that did not get a chance to give their remarks orally. I'd encourage them to please submit your comments in writing, or if you are able to go to tomorrow evening's meeting in Waimea, please join us there, and we will make a point of having you give your remarks first if you decide to do that. Okay, thank you again very much. We appreciate your time and your willingness to share your perspectives with us. Thank you. Good night.
Everybody, let's be safe as we move out there, okay? There are a lot of people counting on the manao in this room to continue deeply. We don't know where the dark ocean is taking us. Let's make sure to keep the sails ready to adjust, keep the armor in tight, keep our eyes on the stars. Be safe.
Okay. Closing song. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. So again, Gilo, clearly against TMT. Ka'u, clearly against TMT. Kona, clearly against TMT. The stance, the position has not changed. We continue on. We hope they listen. But if they don't, then we know the drill. We'll see you guys all on the Mauna. Mahalo nui for tuning in. Be safe. Aloha.
Aloha.